Jaquelo. Have a great day.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It is 9 degrees downtown right now. Thanks for joining us. You're on Information Radio here on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning, wherever you're joining us. I hope you had a great weekend. Today's going to be a nice day, sunny and a high of 17. We actually... like the last few weekends, we've had cold weekends and warmer during the week, and that's going to be the case again. We're going to have actually a pretty decent week. It's going to get warmer from here. Let's say good morning to the team. Good morning to Mr. Abby Adeyemi. He always whispers the early morning temperature in my ear as I run into the studio. Abby's our technical producer and also covers weather on the program. Good morning to Corey Funk, who directs the show and will be on the air covering your commute. Good morning to our YouTube producer, Kevin Nipatebo, who's giving you a wave over YouTube if you're watching the show early this morning. We're on air with you till, as I mentioned, 8:37. If you need to reach us on the commute with any news, 788-3093. Let's begin our Monday morning with what is making news on this significant October 7th. Of course, the anniversary of the attacks in Israel and also the resulting war. But there's coverage of that, but also coverage of other local stories. So Heather Wells is here to talk about all of it. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, today, the one-year anniversary since Israel was attacked by Hamas. That, as you mentioned, has divided communities around the world. Here in Manitoba, a new group wants to encourage dialogue between local Jewish and Palestinian communities. The group is called Manitoba Friends of Standing Together. We're going to hear more about it coming up. As well, about 1,500 people were at Blue Cross Park yesterday. You may have seen them. You may have been among them. They were all there as part of the Canadian Cancer Society CIBC Run for the Cure. An organizer says they raised about $400,000. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of that new group, we're going to actually hear a conversation between two Winnipeggers, one Palestinian and one Jewish today. We'll hear how they're creating dialogue between their communities. So this is part of a special interview that my colleague Nadia Kidwai had on the Weekend Morning Show, and we're going to play part of that for you. And all week long, I should mention, we're going to have conversations with different perspectives on what's been happening in the Middle East, different Manitobans with different perspectives. So we'll have special coverage throughout the week. That and much more. We'll talk about the wind in Manitoba. You might have had a power outage or a tree down. So stay tuned. Right now, though, let's turn our attention to World Report.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Victor Garber is one of those actors who's been in everything. Titanic, Sweeney Todd, Alias, Legally Blonde, Frasier. I mean, the list goes on and on. Victor is getting the Lifetime Achievement Award from his hometown of London, Ontario, and he'll be here to look back on a remarkable career.
I've really had a great life.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. 1 year after the October 7 Hamas attacks, Israel is a nation at war on multiple fronts. The Lebanese militant group Hezbollah launched missiles at Haifa on Israel's northern coast. Media say 10 people were injured. Tal Rosen is with Israeli emergency services there.
I heard a boom, and then I saw this building. I found 4 people injured, between minor to moderate.
Israel's military says it has been targeting Hezbollah strongholds in Beirut and southern Lebanon, but it is also shooting down missiles flying toward Tel Aviv. The armed wing of Hamas says it has fired rockets targeting that city. We'll have more on the Israel-Hamas war in a minute, but first.
Sad, emotion, unbelievable, like a nightmare.
We have details of how Israelis are paying tribute to the nearly 1,200 people who were killed on October 7 and the roughly 250 others who were taken to Gaza as hostages. Our CBC correspondent Sasha Petrusik is in Reim, the site of the Nova Music Festival massacre.
With the sound of war just a few kilometers away in Gaza, tears flowed in a dusty field. 1 year ago, this was a dance floor for thousands of young people at the Nova Music Festival. Today, it's their memorial, where a DJ plays the last song many of them ever heard. Early last October 7th, after that song, sirens rang out, rockets filled the sky, and heavily armed Hamas militants stormed in. People tried to run or hide, but 40 people were taken hostage and 364 were killed, making this the deadliest spot on a day that saw more than 1,200 Israelis die. Hundreds came to remember.
I'll never stop dancing for him.
Canadian Ben Haas narrowly missed coming to the festival. His friend came and was shot dead.
To be here is crazy. It gives me all emotions all over.
This nightmare wasn't supposed to happen.
Vicky Farage lost her daughter. She can't understand how the attackers could have killed so many so coldly.
We don't accept it. There's no room for hate, revenge, anger. No.
Like many here, leaving candles and saying prayers, she still seems in shock, especially since the conflict continues. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, in Reim, Israel.
In the Palestinian territories, there are no official vigils to mark the Hamas attack. In Gaza, officials say Israeli attacks have killed more than 41,000 people. Independent analysis suggests 60% of buildings are unlivable. And in the occupied West Bank, violence inflicted by Israel's military and extremist settlers have killed more than 700 Palestinians in the past year. Our correspondent Chris Brown is in Ramallah.
Israel's military says Hamas fighters in Gaza had planned to fire a barrage of missiles into southern Israel to mark the October 7th anniversary. The IDF says they managed to shoot off 4 rockets this morning before its troops destroyed the launchers. But that suggests even after a year of punishing attacks, the militant group is far from dead. Over the weekend, Israeli forces stormed Jabalia in the north of the Strip and issued new evacuation orders, which will again displace thousands of civilians because the IDF claims Hamas elements are trying to regroup.
Everyone dreams from us is destroyed here in Gaza.
People in Gaza, interviewed by a videographer working for CBC News, spoke of a year of utter desperation. Mohammed Adwa is a 25-year-old medical student who's been displaced 4 times.
My biggest hope is to be safe. I didn't need anything more, just to be safe.
Miranda Asaf, a 37-year-old English teacher and mother of 5, has been displaced 10 times.
We can't send our children to schools because all the schools are destroyed. We can't find any mosque, church. Everything is completely destroyed.
For Palestinians outside Gaza in the occupied West Bank, it's also been a year of losses. Hundreds of thousands of laborers have been unable to work in Israel, sapping the economy, and extremist Jewish settlers are emboldened. Rights groups say attacks on Palestinian communities have become much more frequent and violent. Chris Brown, CBC News in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
A Russian judge reads out American Stephen Hubbard's sentence. The 72-year-old man from Michigan was convicted of serving as a mercenary for Ukraine. He was given nearly 7 years in prison. Russian investigators say Hubbard was paid $1,000 a month to serve in a Ukrainian territorial defense unit in the city of Izium. Hubbard had been living there for the past 10 years. Russian state media say Hubbard had pleaded guilty, but his relatives have told Reuters they doubt he would not have confessed to such a charge. Hubbard is one of 10 Americans currently in Russian jails. Another hurricane is on its way to Florida just days after Helene left devastation along the western coast. People living there are boarding up their windows. Hurricane Milton is now making its way towards them. It has spun into a Category 2 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. The CBC's Ithel Musa is following the storm from Washington. And Ithel, what is the latest?
Well, communities in Florida are preparing to get hit by a potential Category 3 hurricane. Milton is forecast to make landfall on Florida's western Gulf Coast this week in the Tampa Bay area, where communities are still reeling from the destruction of Hurricane Helene. That storm made landfall on September 26 as a Category 4 hurricane, killing more than 200 people across 6 states and causing billions of dollars worth of damage. There are still people today without power. Florida Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency for 51 of the state's 67 counties in preparation for Milton. Officials are urging residents to make safety plans now before it's too late. Here's Florida Senator Rick Scott.
It's going to have wind, it can kill you. It's going to have water, it can kill you. So I hope everybody right now starts thinking about what in the living daylights are you going to do?
People are still cleaning up from Hurricane Helene. What are Floridians being told to do now?
Quite simply, to get out. Several counties along the Gulf Coast have issued evacuation orders. Residents are being asked to leave and seek shelter elsewhere. Here's more from Florida's Director of Emergency Management, Kevin Guthrie.
I have the state emergency response team preparing for the largest evacuation that we have seen, most likely since 2017 Hurricane Irma.
Officials are also encouraging residents to clean up as much debris as possible left behind by Hurricane Helene so that drainage areas are clear before any heavy rainfall to avoid further flooding. Officials fear the wreckage from Helene could pose a serious hazard once Milton hits.
Thank you, Ithel.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Ithel Musa in Washington. Scurvy sounds like a disease of the past, but Canadian doctors are being urged to look out for symptoms of vitamin C deficiency in their patients, and some experts say the rising cost of fruits and vegetables could be a factor. Mike Crawley has more.
This is 5 days worth of food for the city now.
More than 300,000 people used the Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto over the past year. That's 1/10 of the city's population. The food bank's CEO, Neil Hetherington, says across Canada, people with low incomes are feeling the pinch from rising food prices.
And so they are making decisions to buy less fruits and vegetables and instead substitute it for much more processed food.
A report published today in the Canadian Medical Association Journal recounts a case study of a woman in Toronto recently diagnosed with scurvy. She had been living almost entirely on canned soup and tuna, along with white bread and little in the way of fruit and vegetables.
This isn't the first case of scurvy that I've seen in my career so far.
The report's lead author, Dr. Sally Engelhardt. She's an internal medicine specialist at Toronto's Mount Sinai Hospital.
If you're not thinking about scurvy, then there's no way that you're going to be able to diagnose it.
Dr. Danielle Raza is a family physician at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. He was not involved in treating the woman.
I think this case study speaks to the broader concern and the increasing trend we're seeing in food insecurity in our patients.
While there are no hard figures on the incidence of scurvy in Canada, a recently published paper found the rate among hospitalized children in the U.S. tripled between 2016 and 2020. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, wow, with the wind once again over the weekend in Manitoba. Good morning, everyone. A little calmer right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. This is CBC. The show is Information Radio. Well, we're going to take stock of what happened with the wind. Trees down, power out. Stay tuned for that. In addition to the October 7th anniversary, a year after the Hamas-led attacks on October 7th, we're going to look at the evolving political debate about the war within Israel, and also how Netanyahu's being viewed by Israel, people who live in Israel. So stay tuned. That's coming up as well. Also this morning in 10 to 7 in the first hour of the show, the aftermath of Hurricane Helene is still being felt in many U.S. states, and hurricane season is not over. So we're going to hear more about what to expect for the next few months. Stay with us. Heather Wells is in with local headlines.
Good morning. Well, the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba says if they keep fighting each other, we're all going to lose. Ramzi Zaid on this first anniversary since Israel was attacked by Hamas. A new group in Winnipeg wants to encourage dialogue between local Jewish and Palestinian communities. Manitoba Friends of Standing Together aims to create a space where people can simply talk with one another. We're going to hear more coming up. As well, Thousands of healthcare support workers are poised to strike starting tomorrow. Talks continue through the weekend, but both MGEU and CUPE say they were unsuccessful. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's happening in the commute first, and then we'll turn our attention to the weather. Corey Funk's in studio. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, really, it's a pretty quiet commute out there so far. Haven't heard of any major issues.
Cool.
Bike ride-in was lovely. But if you do see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
And Abby is also in this morning. Hi there, Abby. Adiyemi, how are you?
Good morning. When the weekend, I'll tell you, very, very.
It's crazy, right?
Very. Lots of trees. I was just trying not to get blown away.
Yeah, you know what? I was yesterday after I told Corey this in the newsroom. We did this whole interview about allergies and how they're bad at this time of year, and particularly in the wind. And this was in my infinite wisdom, my weekend, where I'm like, oh, I'll skip my allergy pill. Then I'll go walk around a golf course and the wind will get the pollen in my throat. And I was up half the night with flare up and stuff. It was just crazy. On the other side of it, wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The light at this time of year, the trees changing color. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, really gorgeous this time of the year. You'd see the sun bouncing off those leaves, just going golden and trying to change their colors and all of that.
Yeah.
And compared to what we saw this past weekend, it's going to be much calmer as we get into the week. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 8 degrees. It's clear outside. After that windy weekend we saw, we're going to enjoy more. It's going to be a calmer start this weekend across the province. Plenty of sunshine I see in the forecast. We will be warming up to a high of 17 for the season, which is above seasonal average of 13. And then tonight it's going to remain clear and temperatures goes down to 3 degrees. In other regions, we're seeing 3 degrees in Thompson and 2 in Churchill. And then down south, most of the regions hovering near 5 degrees from Brandon all the way down to Morris. And we're going to see highs close to 19 degrees today. So overall, I'll tell you, it's across board, it's going to be sunny and a warm day, with temperatures ranging from 4 degrees and then warming up to 19 degrees. I'll just tell you, enjoy this period of the year before the cold snap will be coming your way.
Thanks, Abby. Well, how windy was it? A lot of people felt it in a very real way. Justin Ortel with Brandon-based Weather Center of Manitoba spoke to CBC's Arturo Chang over the weekend about what he experienced.
Well, it's been a busy day. My buddy, and he's also a team member, and I traveled from Brandon up to Riding Mountain National Park, and we went for a hike to Bald Hill. And it was extremely windy on top of Bald Hill. We didn't have a weather meter on hand to really test the wind speeds, but we guessed that we definitely had some wind gusts that were over 100 kilometers per hour. If you know Bald Hill, it's a big empty hill with no trees, pretty high up. That's just a bunch of shale rock. So when the wind gusts would get up over those 100 kilometer an hour, that 100 kilometer hour mark, we'd have the rocks flying through the air and dust flying and just lots of leaves raining down from the trees. It was just really insane, I would say.
So you're back in Brandon. What have you seen there?
And we were driving down First Street just on the way home, and we've seen multiple trees down. And there are some power outages. Unfortunately, the Manitoba Hydro website is down currently, so we don't know the extent of the hydro outages, but we know that a lot of people are out of power right now. And the highest wind gust that was reported at the Brandon Airport was at 4 p.m. with a gust of 94 kilometers per hour. So, yeah, that's when you have wind gusts that strong, it's going to definitely do some damage. And the wind gusts at 8 o'clock are still around 70 kilometers per hour.
That's CBC's Arturo Chang speaking over the weekend with Justin Ortel with the Weather Center of Manitoba. Now, Manitoba Hydro said in the end there were major outages in Brandon, Winnipeg, and the Interlake. About 2,900 hydro customers were without power over the weekend. And it got us questioning in the newsroom, what is going on with the wind? What is going on, Mother Nature? CBC's Austin Shibakiget spoke to meteorologist Shannon Moody of Environment Canada about it.
So we had an Alberta clipper that developed in Alberta and tracked very quickly across the prairies. So it gave significant winds to parts of Saskatchewan yesterday and into Manitoba as well.
And for people who don't know what an Alberta clipper is, can you explain that?
It's just the name of a low-pressure system that develops in Alberta, and characteristically, they track quite quickly.
Exactly how windy did it get yesterday?
Yeah, so we had sustained winds between 60 to 70 kilometers per hour with gusts between 90 to 100 kilometers per hour. In southwestern Manitoba, that's where we saw the most significant winds. So, for example, in Brandon, they hit a maximum wind gust of 94 kilometers per hour, Deerwood, 93 kilometers per hour, and Pilot Mound was maximum wind gust of 91 kilometers per hour.
What are the risks with those kinds of winds?
So we issue wind warnings when we're expected sustained winds of 70 with gusts to 90. So with that, you can see power outages, trees snapping. Like there's really all sorts of damage that can happen with significant winds.
I'm in Winnipeg. It's been fairly windy for the last few days. Is that varying reasons, or what? Just why is it so windy?
Well, I can really only speak with this system. So yesterday, the winds were to do with a low-pressure system, the Alberta Clipper that you mentioned, that was tracking across the prairies. Well, the system's now moved into Ontario, so we are still seeing some gusty winds through southern Manitoba today, but those will gradually subside as the day progresses. Certainly nowhere like what we were seeing yesterday and overnight, but just to know it's still a wee bit gusty, but everything will be improving.
With these systems, is that a sign that fall is here?
Yeah, you could say that. We often see systems like this in the shoulder season. So in fall and spring, we'll see these low-pressure systems that move quite quickly that bring significant winds to parts of the prairies.
That was CBC's Austin Shebekiget speaking to Environment Canada meteorologist Shannon Moody about the wind over the weekend. To be clear, when she was saying in that interview, the winds today, she was referring to yesterday. So we did have a bit of a calmer wind day yesterday, but today even more so. Today we're expecting a pretty calm day overall and sunny, as Abby mentioned, and a high of 17 in Winnipeg.
Singles at the woodbine, dancing in a grapevine, taking boys that are not mine. Circling the goodwill, trying to find a spot that's free. I keep looking until City Hall, Central Park, solid gold. Every stop sign, trying to make the garbage hill climb. Red wine by the riverside. Cross the bridge when we get there. Maybe climb the fire escape. Anything to get away. City Hall, Central Park, solid gold. Playing chicken on Sherbrooke, maybe hit a karaoke bar. We don't have to go too far. Don't you know this is for fur? No one ever calls a chauffeur, and it all becomes a blur. City Hall, Central Park, solid gold. After dark. City Hall, Central Park, solid gold.
That is Winnipeg singer-songwriter Diaphane with Solid Gold. Her debut EP is of the same name. It is out now if you want to check it out. I always like songs that drop local spots into the lyrics. Well, next on the program, as you've been hearing this morning, there's going to be a lot of discussion about the one-year anniversary of October 7th. October 7th, 2023 was the deadliest attack against Israel since the state's establishment in 1948. 1,200 people were killed in the Hamas-led attacks and more than 250 hostages were taken to Gaza. A year later, a devastating war now on multiple fronts, and the violence rages on. Now, within Israel, there is also an ongoing fiery debate right now about whether the Israeli military responses since October 7th are justified, and whether Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is the right person to lead the country. To talk about the politics of the story, Michael Link is with us, Professor Emeritus of Law at Western University and former UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So obviously Benjamin Netanyahu is navigating being at war while being a prime minister in what is a coalition government, so people understand. Can you walk us through the complexities of his political positioning right now in the situation?
Sure. Domestically, that we've seen last week a right-wing opposition leader in the Israeli Knesset cross the floor to join Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet. And like many right-wing politicians in Israel, he has crossed swords with Netanyahu personally, but they've patched up their differences because ideologically they are quite similar. This crossing of the floor brings more stability to Netanyahu's narrow majority in the Knesset. He now has 68 seats in the Knesset of 120 seats altogether. Therefore, I doubt that we would see an election in Israel anytime soon, and it appears that Netanyahu will have the ability to serve out the remaining 2 years of his political mandate with a stable majority. It's a different situation internationally, where Israel's support has waned significantly over the last year, and this, given the catastrophic consequences of the Israeli military bombing and campaign and the missile attacks on Gaza, we have now more than 41,000 Palestinians killed and huge casualty figures among civilians. We have more children and women who have died in this conflict in a single year than in any other conflict over the past 2 years internationally. Israel has been criticized heavily by many of its dwindling international allies. The prosecutor at the International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as the Israeli defense minister, and against 3 Hamas leaders on the grounds of reportedly committing war crimes since October 7th. And we have allegations of genocide being brought against Israel, being litigated at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. So all of this means that while Netanyahu's political fortune seems stable enough in Israel, Israel's international reputation has taken a huge hit over the last 12 months.
What about the public support for Netanyahu within Israel? What does that look like right now?
Yeah, well, it's gone up and down over the course of the last year. And we have to remember, even before October 7th of last year, Benjamin Netanyahu was facing significant domestic opposition in Israel, which were opposing his plans to weaken the domestic judicial system, and particularly to remove much of the powers that the courts would have to be able to review or override legislation coming from the Israeli Knesset. Then came the October 7th attacks, and while there was rallying by some parts of the Israeli public to support him, to respond to the October 7th attacks, there are many others who are very critical of Netanyahu as the prime minister for why these significant security breaches wound up occurring. Now, we've seen his polling going up and down, but in the last 2 weeks, and in the aftermath of his bombing of Lebanon, his polling has actually gone up. And the first time in a number of months, the polls are suggesting that if there was an election in Israel, he would actually win a narrow majority, he and his coalition partners. And any head-to-head polls with respect to other potential prime ministers, such as Benny Gantz, the main opposition leader, Benjamin Netanyahu wins hands down. He leads Benny Gantz by a percentage of 52% to 25%, and overwhelming support with respect to that.
Obviously, Israel's prime minister, anyone who's been following the news would say obviously, continues to say and has never wavered from this, that the overall goal is to eliminate Hamas. But some military leaders now in the IDF are disagreeing with the end game. How significant is that divide?
It is a significant divide. Reporting from Israel suggests that there is a particularly large gap between what Netanyahu and his hawkish cabinet believe on the one hand, which is to fight to the end of the war to eliminate Hamas militarily and politically, and on the other, many of Israel's military and intelligence leaders who said repeatedly that the elimination of Hamas in Gaza or of Hezbollah in Lebanon is an impossible military goal. And I'll give you two leading examples. We've had commentary in the last 2 weeks, both from the former director of the Israeli Mossad, which is the external security service for Israel, and from the former head of Shin Bet, which is the internal Israeli security service, who both said that there is a military strategy to eliminate these organizations with no political end goal in mind. Amy Alion, the former head of the Shin Bet, has said that the key to lasting peace lies in providing Palestinians with a viable political horizon that would lead to a Palestinian state. He says, as the war continues, Hamas gains more power, not less. The only way to defeat Hamas, he said, is to create that political horizon for Palestinians to be able to rally around.
What are you watching for in the next weeks and months on this front?
Oh God! Well, I'm watching with
or
much
daily.
trepidation.
I should frankly ask you daily the way things have been
daily.
evolving, right?
Yeah, as bad as the conditions are right now with the war in Gaza and the war in Lebanon, if Israel decides to respond, and particularly to respond massively to this back and forth that's been going on now between Israel and Iran, I think that we're in for a much more worrisome path. If Israel decides to attack Iran's oil industry, or even more frighteningly, if it decides to attack the nuclear facilities in Iran, as some political leaders in Israel are urging, I think we would have an extraordinary conflict in our hands that may not end up as Israel wishes. The temptation, I think, for Benjamin Netanyahu would be to try to remake the face of the Middle East that this opportunity seems to present to him by a massive attack on Iran, which in his eyes would end the core of evil in the region. I think this would increase the chances of forcing the Americans, who don't want to be involved, to use their military force to become involved, which many Israeli critics of Benjamin Netanyahu are worried that he's hoping for. And I think this risks an escalation that will head in directions that we can't control, that Israel can't control, that the Americans can't control.
Michael Link, thank you for the analysis on the political side of this story. Appreciate it.
Marcy, thank you very much for having me.
It's Michael Link, Professor Emeritus of Law at Western University. He's the former United Nations Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory. Still ahead, and Michael actually just raised this in our talking about business news around Israel and the war. Still ahead on business news, we're going to talk about oil. It has seen the biggest weekly gain in 2 years on rising Middle East tensions. We're going to hear more about that from Christalee from Neil Kumar, who's filling in for Christalee this morning on our business report. Also, we'll hear about the Supreme Court of Canada, which has upheld rules that bolster compensation for air travel passengers. So we're going to hear more about that. In Winnipeg, we have a clear sky. The commute is cooperating, and it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's still a little breezy, but nothing like the wind we had on the weekend. We're going to be sunny today, a high of 17. Right now, it is 8. Memorial services are underway across Israel today, marking the 1-year anniversary of the Hamas attack against Israel on October 7th last year. Air raid sirens mark the moment when the Palestinian militant group Hamas began invading Israel. About 1,200 people were killed in the initial attack and more than 250 were taken hostage. That attack sparked a massive response from the Israeli military in Gaza. Hamas officials say nearly 42,000 Palestinians have died in the territory. The number does not distinguish between civilians and armed fighters. Now, in Manitoba, a new group wants to create space for dialogue between the local Jewish and Palestinian communities. The group is called Manitoba Friends of Standing Together. Ramsey Zaid at the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba has met with members of the group.
We're all humans. We've lived in Palestine, Israel, for longer than 76 years that we've been there. We've been there for hundreds of years living together. We have to get to a place where we can live together again.
One of the group's founders is a Winnipegger born in Israel. Emmett Aviatar says one of the goals is to create a space where people can simply talk to one another. You can hear more just before the 8 o'clock news right here on CBC's Information Radio. Thousands of healthcare support workers are poised to strike this week. Gavin Axelrod has the latest.
Talks continued through the weekend, but MGEU and CUPE say they were unsuccessful. The union said in a joint statement yesterday they bargained all weekend with the help of a conciliator, but the statement said they remain far off from an agreement. If a strike goes ahead, it will involve about 25,000 healthcare support workers across Winnipeg, Brandon, Dauphin, Selkirk, Portage, Winkler, and Steinbach. The workers include healthcare aides, laundry workers, dietary aides, ward clerks, recreation coordinators, and other healthcare support staff who work in hospitals, personal care homes, as well as workers in the home care program. A possible strike would also mark the second biggest one in Manitoba's history. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Peguis First Nation has filed a lawsuit against Winnipeg developer Andrew Marquis. Peguis claims he failed to act in the best interests of the band when he worked for it. In a statement of claim, Peguis alleges Marquis derived what it called a significant improper profit from breaches of fiduciary duty. Peguis alleges Marquis had a Peguis real estate trust purchase an old East St. Paul golf course because he was interested in developing it. The allegations have not been proven in court. No statement of defense has been filed. In a statement, Marquis calls the claim against him baseless, without merit, and legally defective. He says he will move to strike the claim. A child and family services agency in southern Manitoba is being sued by two former employees. The two women worked for Sandy Bay Child and Family Services for more than a decade. They claimed they were wrongfully dismissed in 2021, a year after the agency's executive director, Richard Delarond, was fired over fraud allegations. In separate lawsuits filed in September, Tanya Aitkins and Alyssa Roulette say they were dismissed without cause over allegations they had mismanaged funds and failed to report expense approvals. They argue Sandy Bay CFS has not provided any evidence to support the allegations. Aitkins and Roulette are seeking compensation for lost wages and benefits. Sandy Bay CFS tells CBC they had not yet been made aware of the lawsuits. This year's Nobel Prize in Medicine has this morning been awarded to Americans Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkin. They are being honored for their discovery of microRNA, a fundamental principle covering how gene activity is regulated. Today is the start of this year's Nobel Week. The Chemistry, Physics, and Literature Awards will all be handed out leading up to the Peace Prize, which will be awarded on Friday. The Nobel for Economics will be announced next Monday. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Well, running, walking, and rolling for a cure. About 1,500 at Blue Cross Park yesterday, all part of the Canadian Cancer Society CIBC Run for the Cure. The annual event raises money to fight breast cancer. One of the organizers, Shauna Newans, crossed the finish line arm in arm with her family and friends.
Just shows the power of support and the friends and family that show up to support those who are in the fight, those who have finished the fight, and those who haven't started their fight yet.
Newen says they raised around $400,000 this year. You can find more news updated throughout your morning. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, we'll have to get permission to get these photos up, so we have to credit them, of course, to put them on any CBC platform, but I'd love it to put it on our YouTube stream. Steve Bell, of course, who has a new album out, local Manitoba artist, he was driving home from Steinbach last night, and he posted on his social page, he was at an Al Simmons show, by the way, or actually it was his show, I think, and Al Simmons showed up with a surprise song. But on the way back into Winnipeg, he posted the Northern Lights. And a lot of people are posting from yesterday saying it was incredible.
All weekend long, it's been so active, right?
Yeah, and the thing that you don't see all that regularly, I know we talk about the Northern Lights a lot on the show, but is the red that's part of it. So you often see the greens and the yellows and those bright colors, but last night it even had this beautiful thick layer of red in the sky. People saying you could see them right in the city of Winnipeg as well. So
just brilliant, right?
If you've got photos like Steve Bell did, please let us know. And you can post directly on my Facebook page. Maybe we'll get them in our YouTube stream. So I'm Marcy Marcusa on Facebook, MARCY, if you're looking how to spell it. And post away. I didn't catch any of this, but I was to bed early last night.
Yeah, I read up about it, but I just could not make it to catch it last night. I was feeling cold, and I'm like inside all evening and just following the threads. And it's all about the solar blast from the sun, because we've had like really sunny week last week, so that solar flare coming just mixed up with the reflections, and it was just beautiful.
Well, I'll tell you what, speaking of staying in bed, a lot of people are remarking on the change, right? The feeling yesterday, like in Saturday night when it got really dark and rainy and windy, it sure felt like fall. We have a return to some warmth this week, though, Abby.
Yes, after that mixed weather we saw this past weekend, we're looking at a sunny, warm day across the province. We're going to see temperatures from low single digits in the northern part of the province, and then we'll see teens down south, like close to 19. Winnipeg currently 3 degrees at the airport and 8 degrees downtown with clear skies. We're expecting a sunny day ahead. We're going to warm up to 17 degrees, and then tonight we dip down to 3, and tomorrow promises to be, another sunny day with highs around 18. Then for midweek, Mercy, we're going to be getting to 20s. So fingers crossed for that. Heading west to Brandon, 2 degrees at this time and mainly clear. Today we'll see a high of 19 for that part of the province, and then some clear skies tonight. You dip down to 4 degrees. Also warm and sunny tomorrow for you in Brandon. Thompson is at 3 and cloudy at this time. Expect a mix of sun and clouds with highs near 10 degrees, and then for tonight to dip to 2. Some clouds will definitely roll in as you get into the evening period. -2 in Churchill at this time. Today also has lots of sun in the forecast. You only warm up to 4 degrees. For tonight, you just dip down back to 2 degrees. Duffin is sitting at 3 and clear this time. Also sunny skies in the forecast. You'll warm up to 17, similar to Winnipeg. Tonight to dip to 3. Similar conditions in Gimli at 3 degrees, at 5 degrees at this time. For the Interlake region, we're looking at lots of sunshine in the forecast. You do warm up to 17 for today, and then tonight you drop to 3. Steinbach at 4 and clear. You're also going to see sunny skies with highs near 17 degrees, and then you dip to 3 degrees tonight. Morris, 6 degrees at this time. Clear skies you're experiencing. For that Pembina Valley region area, you should be seeing lots of sunshine in the forecast. Highs near 18 degrees, and then for tonight you drop to about 5. Tomorrow also some sunny day in the forecast. Just in summary, we're looking at a sunny and a warm day across board. Not like the strong winds we saw gusting all the way to almost 90. Though the wind, some breezy conditions still being felt outside, but it's much calmer in Manitoba today. We're going to see highs warm up near 19 if we get there, but we're looking at mostly 17s and 18s in most of the regions.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, you've had an easy go of it, I gotta say. Commute. Like, I feel like for weeks we keep like turning to you and you go, everything's good.
Yeah, but now you just jinxed it because
I ruined
tomorrow
it.
we're not going to get snow, but all of a sudden it's just going to like turn.
But everything's good right now.
Everything. There actually is one thing to keep an eye out for.
What is it?
Yeah, southbound Henderson at Hespeler. There's a multi-vehicle collision and a downed traffic standard blocking the curb lane and middle lanes. So keep left to get around that. So there are crews on scene. So that is southbound Henderson at Hespeler in the curb and middle lane. So that is one issue out there. But other than that, things have been running pretty smoothly.
I spoke too soon. Look at that. right?
So that number to call me if you do see anything or have an update on this in particular, would love to hear from you. 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's happening in business news. Neil Kumar is here with our report this morning. Hi there, Neil.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So oil has seen its biggest weekly gain in 2 years on the rising Middle East tensions. What's happening? What more can you tell us about the oil prices?
That's right. Oil prices are on track for a significant weekly surge in nearly 2 years, as this is being driven by fears that Israel could launch strikes on Iranian oil infrastructure as retaliation for a missile attack on its territory. West Texas Intermediate crude edged higher on Friday to more than $75 U.S. per barrel, which comes after a nearly 5% rally the previous day. U.S. President Joe Biden says that the U.S. was deliberating potential support for Israeli strikes on Iranian energy facilities. However, a U.S. official did clarify later that discussions were ongoing with Israel and no final decision had been reached. Crude prices did see a spike of nearly 9% last week amid concerns over a potential disruption to oil supplies from the Middle East. The region accounts for about 1/3 of the world's crude oil production, with Iran alone. In recent months, it has been producing about 3.3 million barrels per day. Oil market watchers agree that if retaliation from Israel targets Iran's oil infrastructure, it will have a major impact on the market.
Let's go to another story, Neil. The Supreme Court of Canada has now upheld rules, I understand, that bolster compensation for air travel passengers. What's behind that?
Yes, the ruling is subjected to delays, cancellations, and damaged luggage on international flights. And this is a victory for air travelers across Canada, as the country's highest court unanimously dismissed an appeal by Griffin Airlines that challenged Canada's passenger rights charter on Friday. Air Canada, Porter Airlines, and 16 other appellants had argued that air passenger protection regulations that were launched in 2019 violate global standards and should be rendered invalid for trips into and out of Canada. The legal challenge states that by imposing heftier compensation requirements for flight cancellations or lost baggage on trips abroad, the regulations exceeded the Canadian Transportation Agency's authority, and they breached international rules known as the Montreal Convention. In December, the Federal Court of Appeal dismissed the airline's case with the exception of one regulation that applies to the temporary loss of baggage. The Canadian Transportation Agency and Attorney General argued there's no clash between passenger protections and the Montreal Convention.
And finally, and I'm going to let you say the name of the logo because I actually don't know how to say it, but Tiger Woods' logo dispute has escalated with a federal court filing now. How do you say the name of the logo?
Tiger Air.
Tiger Air. Okay.
The silent R on the back end. So that's right, a logo dispute between Tiger Woods' apparel company, Sunday Red, and Tiger Air, a company that makes cooling products for athletes, is being handled by the U.S. federal court system. Last week, Tiger Air filed a notice of opposition with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office against Sunday Red's Tiger logo, stating that the golf legends company unlawfully hijacked Tiger Air's design into its own branding. In a subsequent court filing, Woods' legal team sued Tiger Air, accusing the company of trying to capitalize off Sunday Red's status as a bigger brand. Sunday Red has filed a motion to dismiss the patent claim. According to the lawsuit, Sunday Red says it has attempted to resolve the infringement claims through negotiation, and that Tiger Air has sent outrageous monetary demands to Sunday Red, which is owned by TaylorMade.
What's going on in the markets this morning?
So in Europe, markets are turning lower after starting the new trading week with positive momentum. Germany, France, and the UK are all down. In Asia, Japan is leading Asian markets higher. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is down $1.07 to $75.47 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up $5.90 to $2,673 U.S. per ounce. And the Canadian dollar is down 0.07 of a cent to 73.6 cents U.S.
All right, Neil, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's Neil Kumar with our business news. Well, thanks for joining us wherever you're joining us this morning, everyone. How you doing adjusting to fall? A lot of people talking about how dark it is. It's that special kind of dark when the seasons change. Welcome to your Monday morning. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. My name's Marcy Marcusa, and I'm here with our team. So Kevin Ipatebo and Corey Funk and Abby Adeyemi in our control room this morning. Heather Wells with our news from our CBC News Center. In Winnipeg, currently it's 8 degrees. It's clear. Brandon's clear and 3. Thompson's cloudy and 4. 4 degrees, and it's going to be warmer and calmer wind-wise all across the province. Well, up next on the show, an interesting story about farming. Now, you've probably heard the expression busy as a bee. Now there's some researchers who are trying to double their work. It has to do with a farming technique called bee vectoring that uses bees to deliver pest control agents to crops. Kind of ironic, right? CBC's Blair Sanderson got busy to tell us more.
So I'm just going to light my bee smoker now. The bees walk away from it, so it just gives us a bit more of a clear space to work around the hive without getting in the way of the bees.
In an open field full of wildflowers, beekeeper Lauren Park gets ready to check on her hives. In the spring, she rents these bees to fruit farmers who use them to pollinate their crops.
The first half of our season is really focused on commercial pollination for apples and stone fruit and blueberries and cranberries. Most kinds of fruit are pretty heavily dependent on bees.
Because of that, Park has a strong desire to protect bees as much as possible, which is why she's keeping a watchful eye on a farming practice that's getting a bit of buzz these days.
Introducing BVT, Bee Vectoring Technology.
This is a video by a Canadian company called BVT. It's designed a special hive system that essentially coats parts of the bee in an antifungal agent. Those bees then visit crop flowers as they normally do and leave a bit of the agent on the plant, protecting it from disease. It's sold as an alternative to spraying entire fields. BVT didn't respond to requests for an interview, but a farmer who uses their product is happy to talk.
So yes, I spray much less than I used to, 5 years ago.
Roy Jones is a fruit farmer in Alabama who uses bee vectoring, mostly on his strawberry crops. He says the bees are a better delivery system because they visit flowers over and over again.
There's a tray that they walk through on the way out of their hive, and they walk through that tray and they get it all over them. So you see these little powder puffy white bees come flying out with this dust all over them, and they come back in clean. And then they go back out and they've got it all over them again. And while they're getting pollen, they're depositing this all over the flower. And it just works so well.
Bee vectoring is becoming more common in the United States and parts of Europe and South America. In Canada, the technology is still undergoing trials. That's according to Charlotte Coates, who researched bee vectoring as part of her master's program at the University of Guelph. She says bee health is a key consideration.
So you have to make sure that the substance that the bees are carrying isn't going to harm them. So in this case, it actually is a fungus that can infect insects. But because the bees are so much bigger than the pests that we're dealing with, the concentration of the fungus isn't high enough to kill the bees. And it's just going to be enough to target the pest and none of the other beneficial insects that you're working with.
Of course, there's lots of concern these days about the overall health of bee populations around the world. A changing climate, loss of habitat, and other pressures are making a bee's life more precarious. But Charlotte Coates says there's no evidence this new practice contributes to the problem. Back at the hives with beekeeper Lauren Park, she's not convinced vectoring is fully benign, even if the results so far appear to be positive.
As a beekeeper who does pollination, I understand that, when I pollinate, the goal is to produce a crop of fruit or produce a crop of whatever. But on the other hand, as a beekeeper, I'm always thinking of the bees first, not of the fruit first, not of what the honey first even. I'm thinking of the bee health first.
It's a lot to think about, as the expression busy as a bee takes on new meaning as their role in agriculture begins to expand. For CBC Radio, I'm Blair Sanderson.
It's a community built on industry, but there's a lot more to it than that. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to Lac du Bonny, October 7th to the 11th. I'm Emily Brass, and Lac du Bonny, let's get to know each other. Share the stories of your community so CBC can share them with the province. CBC's Communities in Focus, Lac du Bonny, October 7th to the 11th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
So what's wonderful about Communities in Focus is I just want to remind you that our team is going to be there for the whole week, and there's office hours. You can drop in and pitch a story. Many of you, what an active, vibrant community. I can already tell because everyone's writing to us. So getting lots of comments and pictures on my Facebook page, and people are direct messaging with stories. We'll try to cover as many as we can. The whole point of Communities in Focus is to hear from you what we should be covering as we put your community in focus, pardon me. So that is all week long. Now, Thursday morning, Corey and I are going to be out live with our show. So Information Radio will be live at Drifters on Thursday morning. If you are listening and you want to join us, we would love to have you there. I'm also hoping that I'll connect with early morning commuters and get you on the air, because a lot of people go to Lac du Bonnet for vacation, for cabining, staying at the cabin and such. But also a lot of people telework now, we understand. So you might stay there. I'd love to hear from you. Or you commute to Winnipeg and you live in Lac du Bonnet. So it would be fabulous to have you on our program on Thursday morning from Drifters. So you can always reach out to the show if you want to be part of that. As the Reeve eloquently put it in one of our meetings when we were exploring, visiting the area, the Reeve of the RM said it's just one big cup of coffee away. It is 9 minutes to 7 o'clock as you're drinking your coffee this morning. And let's continue talking about the wind and the weather. Earlier this hour, we heard about the strong winds and how Manitoba was affected over the weekend with a lot of power outages and such. On a bigger mass scale, of course, a lot of people are watching what's going on with hurricanes right now. More than 200 were killed in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, and the cleanup is far from over. Forecasters are now looking at what might come next. Some are warning there could be more major hurricanes before the season officially ends, which is usually the end of November. To look at what to expect, Chris Fogarty is with us next, program manager and meteorologist with the Canadian Hurricane Centre. Good morning.
Good morning.
So why don't we start with Hurricane Helene and talk about the power and the path of it and what your sense of it was?
Yeah, Helene was a Category 4 peak intensity, and it was also a fairly large hurricane. So it surprised some in western Florida because of that large size. The storm surge from it was quite extensive, even about 100 miles from the center. And then, of course, the merging of the hurricane with a weather front, a cold front to the north over the Appalachian Mountains in the Carolinas, produced this extreme rainfall situation that occurred there. And the storm also slowed down as after it made landfall. So that exacerbated the rainfall for sure.
So what does the rest of this hurricane season look like in the States and in Canada as well?
It was quiet during the peak of the hurricane, the otherwise normal peak of the hurricane season, as you know, but it got more ramped up recently into October here. And in fact, as of today, we have 3 hurricanes on the map in the Atlantic. That's the first time we've had that occur after September. So the season this year, basically, it's delayed, and we're having all this activity during the month of October. And now we're watching Hurricane Milton, which is another Category 3 in the Gulf of Mexico.
What do we understand about how climate change is affecting hurricane season?
Well, the big thing with the climate change is you've got more, warmer atmosphere, and the warmer atmosphere has the capacity to hold more moisture. So these storms will produce more precipitation, not just hurricanes, but even winter storms. Also, we're noticing that the jet stream pattern and the speed that these storms move is slowing somewhat. And, of course, what that means is you will get wind and rain or whatever the weather is lasting for a little bit longer at a given location. So that increases the effects. And it also leads to an increased incidence of drought on the other side of the story.
How accurately can major hurricanes be predicted?
We can, about 2 weeks ahead of time, we can get an idea whether, the hurricane region will become active or not, sort of in a yes or no sense. The major hurricanes, predicting when they will occur and their general area, 1 week is probably the outer limit for predictability. And I think that will go forward into the future, right? There's only so much that we can, accurately we can predict. So, yes, about 1 week, and certainly within a few days, like Milton in this situation, hitting Florida likely Wednesday.
Chris Fogarty, thank you very much for walking us through what's been happening. Appreciate your time.
No problem at all.
It's Chris Fogarty, program manager and meteorologist with the Canadian Hurricane Centre. We reached him this morning in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and we'll hear more about the aftermath of Helene and, of course, the concerns with Milton and the other two hurricanes and how unusual that is for this time of year. Coming up on World Report. It is 5 to 7. Before we turn our attention to headlines this morning, let's just dip back into your Monday morning traffic situation, because on your morning commute there is an issue.
Yeah, southbound Henderson at Hespeler, there's a multi-vehicle collision and then a down traffic standard actually blocking the southbound, the curb lane and the middle lanes. So you want to keep left to get around that. There are crews on scene right now, says the city. But if you do see something else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you have an update on that or anything else. I am curious how backed up it is there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Otherwise, as Corey mentioned, your commute should be going well, but please alert us to anything if you do come across a problem. School day number 6 in the cycle. It is Monday, October the 7th, and we will have more coverage of the significance of this day coming up in the next hour of Information Radio. I also want to mention there's a solidarity gathering to remember all the lives lost after the Hamas attack on Israel 1 year ago, and that is being planned for Winnipeg later today. In the next hour of Information Radio, we have a conversation with the president of the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg about what he would like Manitobans to be thinking about on this 1 year somber anniversary. So stay tuned for that. And we have more coverage planned as well to talk about peace building in our community. So we have a special hour ahead and also a week ahead where we're going to be hearing different perspectives from different Manitobans on the significance of October 7th, but also, of course, on the resulting much wider war that has resulted now. So that is all coming up this week on Information Radio. Right now, though, it is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock, and for more details on stories, Heather Wells is in with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, along that vein, the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba says, if we keep fighting each other, we're all going to lose. Ramsey Zaid, on this first anniversary since Israel was attacked by Hamas, a new group in Manitoba wants to encourage dialogue between the local Jewish and Palestinian communities. We're going to hear more about Manitoba Friends of Standing Together. That's coming up. As well, about 1,500 people were out yesterday running, walking, rolling through Blue Cross Park, all part of the Canadian Cancer Society CIBC Run for the Cure. An organizer says they raised around $400,000 for breast cancer supports and research this year. We'll hear more about that event as well in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
In Winnipeg right now, we have a clear sky. It's 8 degrees. Today's sunshine and a beautiful high of 17 degrees. And wow, the week. Sunny, 18 tomorrow, sunny, and a high of 23 on Wednesday. We might see 24 on Thursday once again. So it's going to be a lot calmer and a little bit warmer than we've had. In the commute, Corey just mentioned everything that you need to know currently, but 788-3093 as a reminder always is the number to reach us with anything that changes. Well, speaking of that group, that peace building group that Heather was mentioning, we're going to hear part of a conversation that my colleague Nadia Kidwai had on the Weekend Morning Show, hearing more about what it's going to take to build bridges across seemingly impossible divides. We're going to hear from two Winnipeggers in detail, one Palestinian and one Jewish, about how they're creating dialogue between their communities. Also, in the next hour of the show, a bit of a feature and something you might remember. Before Canada Life Centre, the historic Eaton's building stood at 320 Portage Avenue. Now some remnants of that legacy reside just a few blocks away. We're going to visit a growing collection of Eaton's memorabilia. Stay tuned. World Report's coming up next at 7.
Today on The Current.
Israel's government has warned that Hamas will pay an unprecedented price for the attacks. It has been a year since the Hamas attack in Israel and the start of the war in Gaza. We will hear from two people whose stories we've been following over the course of this year of conflict and how they are coping now. It's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. On this October 7, Israel is filled with the sounds of war and mourning. At a sunrise memorial in Jerusalem, a siren blared at 6:29 a.m., the exact time when Hamas led an attack on Israel 1 year ago. More than 200 people were brought to Gaza as hostages. Some are still missing, and nearly 1,200 people were killed. Many were young people attending a musical festival. Anat Regev's niece was one of them.
This is where she was killed. So this is the ceremony. This is where she was. This is where she was happy in the last her moments. It was here.
Emotions are charged, and there are wars still putting more lives in danger, with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing is in Jerusalem with more.
In the south of Beirut, explosions and fireballs. Early morning strikes that Israel Defense Forces say targeted Hezbollah intelligence headquarters and a weapons facility. But it's the fear hitting regular citizens Matthew Hollingsworth struggles with.
The situation is deteriorating, and the fear in the place is palpable because everybody is scared of an all-out war.
The Lebanon director of the World Food Program says more than 2,000 people have been killed in Lebanon in the past 2 weeks, and more than 1 million others have been displaced. Aerial attacks fly across the Israel-Lebanon border daily. Hezbollah says it's defending Gaza. In a statement, it calls Israel a cancerous gland that must be eliminated. Hezbollah rockets broke through Israel's Iron Dome overnight. Local media reports say a restaurant was destroyed in Haifa, wounding several people. The Israel Defense Forces have sent more soldiers over the border into Lebanon, bolstering the ground invasion it says is required for the security of its northern communities.
Israel is fighting back, and we are changing the Middle East.
Zibi Hadavelli is Israel's ambassador to the UK. With a multi-front war underway and a vow to retaliate against Iran, she says Israel is doing the work to protect itself and the wider region from Iran and its proxies. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Hamas is firing missiles from the Gaza Strip towards Tel Aviv and other parts of southern Israel. In the Palestinian territories, local officials say Israeli attacks have killed more than 41,000 people in Gaza. Independent analysis suggests 60% of buildings are unlivable. And in the occupied West Bank, violence inflicted by Israel's military and extremist settlers have killed more than 700 Palestinians in the past year. Our correspondent Chris Brown is in Ramallah.
Israel's military says Hamas fighters in Gaza had planned to fire a barrage of missiles into southern Israel to mark the October 7th anniversary. The IDF says they managed to shoot off 4 rockets this morning before its troops destroyed the launchers. But that suggests even after a year of punishing attacks, the militant group is far from dead. Over the weekend, Israeli forces stormed Jabalia in the north of the Strip and issued new evacuation orders, which will again displace thousands of civilians because the IDF claims Hamas elements are trying to regroup.
Everyone dreams from us is destroyed here in Gaza.
People in Gaza, interviewed by a videographer working for CBC News, spoke of a year of utter desperation. Mohammed Adwa is a 25-year-old medical student who's been displaced 4 times.
My biggest hope is to be safe. I didn't need anything more, just to be safe.
Miranda Asaf, a 37-year-old English teacher and mother of 5, has been displaced 10 times.
We can't send our children to schools because all the schools are destroyed. We can't find any mosque, church. Everything is completely destroyed.
For Palestinians outside Gaza in the occupied West Bank, it's also been a year of losses. Hundreds of thousands of laborers have been unable to work in Israel, sapping the economy, and extremist Jewish settlers are emboldened. Rights groups say attacks on Palestinian communities have become much more frequent and violent. Chris Brown, CBC News in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
Milton is now a Category 3 hurricane. Its winds are blowing at 195 kilometers an hour, and it's moving towards Florida's west coast. People there are boarding up their windows and they're preparing to evacuate their communities, but many are still trying to clean up the mess Helene just left behind. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
The debris removal mission leading into the storm, certainly for all today, all Monday, and probably all of Tuesday, as long as it's safe to do so, is 24/7. It's round the clock, and that's the way it's got to be. The Hurricane Helene left a lot of debris in its wake that did damage to homes. People have had to take things out, and just sitting there is a hazard.
Hurricane Milton is forecast to make landfall early Wednesday. Ukraine's military says it has struck an oil terminal in Russian-occupied Crimea. It happened overnight at the Fedosia terminal. The Russian mayor of the city says a fire broke out on the oil platform. He has declared an emergency at the municipal level. Around 300 people have had to evacuate the city. The Fedosia oil terminal is the largest in Crimea. It is seen as a key hub for Russia's army. The commissioner who investigates the misuse of public funds in Canada says her office is overwhelmed. The Public Sector Integrity Commissioner says they have been inundated with whistleblower tips. The complaints call out mismanagement and serious misconduct within Canada's public sector. But as Matthew Kupfer reports, a 3-year backlog is putting some investigations at risk.
If we don't get to the investigations, we can't get to the conclusions, we can't make recommendations.
Harriet Soloway took over as the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner last year, and since then, the number of complaints to the office has ballooned, while its budget has stayed the same.
Those two things together make for a crisis. More demand, no more resources. Can we fulfill our mandate?
Soloway is asking the federal government for several $1 million to address this backlog.
If there are things that are amiss, they will continue to fester and probably get worse rather than improve.
David Hutton is a senior fellow at Toronto Metropolitan University's Centre for Free Expression. He says empowered whistleblowers could have prevented costly mistakes like Phoenix, which is still causing issues with civil servant pay, and the procurement of the ArriveCan health information app.
It's a disaster. These things are all time sensitive. As soon as a whistleblower begins to see things wrong, and shows themselves in any way to their management to be questioning that, then they're a target.
A private member's bill proposes an update to the commissioner's mandate to expand her responsibilities, but provides no new funding. It's currently waiting in the Senate, but may not get royal assent before the next election. In the meantime, Soloway is still encouraging public servants to come forward with their disclosures. Matthew Kupfer, CBC News, Ottawa.
The European Space Agency is preparing to launch a spacecraft to a pair of asteroids. It will travel atop a SpaceX rocket. This is not the first time the asteroids have been visited, and as senior science reporter Nicole Mortellaro tells us, it is all in the name of protecting Earth.
A new mission with a spacecraft called Hera will soon be on its way to a pair of asteroids named Didymos and Dimorphos, which lie beyond the orbit of Mars.
Humanity's first ever attempt at trying to move another celestial body.
In 2022, a NASA mission called DART deliberately slammed a spacecraft into Dimorphos in a successful test that changed its orbit around the larger Didymos. It's all part of a planetary defense system for Earth, to see if one day we could change the orbit of an asteroid that could be on a collision course with our planet. Paulo Martino, Hera's deputy project manager, says that planetary defense is extremely important, as we know asteroids have hit Earth in the past.
It's something for which we have clear evidence and statistics and know it's going to happen again. It's not if, but when.
The DART mission changed the orbit by 33 minutes. Now, Hera is going to see what else has changed in this asteroid system.
We've already been able to see from ground that there was indeed a change to this orbit, but there are a lot of unknowns.
And we have impact.
Mike Daly is a professor at York University's Lassonde School of Engineering in Toronto and was a co-investigator on the DART mission.
DART was all about seeing how we can actually move an asteroid essentially from a collision course with Earth. So we're really the first generation who can protect ourselves from some catastrophic event like that.
Nicole Mortellero, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Hope you had a great weekend. Well, further to remembering October 7th, this hour on the program, a new organization in Manitoba is hoping to build bridges between the Jewish and Palestinian communities. We're going to hear from members of both of those communities from here in Winnipeg about what gives them hope for the future. We're going to talk about, hear part of that conversation, rather. That's coming up at 10 to 8. It was part of a feature that my colleague Nadia Kidwai had on the Weekend Morning Show. In addition, this hour on the program to something much different. Before Canada Life Centre, the historic Eaton's building stood at 320 Portage Avenue. Maybe you recall it. Now some remnants of that legacy reside just a few blocks away. We're going to visit a growing collection of Eaton's memorabilia with our community reporter. To Heather Wells first, though, to talk about more news today in Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, talks continue today as 25,000 healthcare support workers are poised to strike starting tomorrow. Now, those talks did continue through the weekend, but MGEU and CUPE both say they were unsuccessful. We'll hear the latest coming up. Peguis First Nation has filed a lawsuit against Winnipeg developer Andrew Marquis. Peguis claimed he failed to act in the best interests of the band when he worked for it. In a statement of claim, Peguis alleges Marquis derived what it called a significant improper profit from breaches of fiduciary duty. In a statement, Marquis calls the claim against him baseless, without merit, and legally defective. We'll hear more on all those stories coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into what's happening out there weather-wise. Kevin just had this beautiful shot of the sky up on YouTube, as he does at this time of day. And we've got a pretty one on our hands, Abby. You almost got a lavender look to the sky.
Yeah, that's the golden hour. I love this part of the morning.
Beautiful.
This part of the morning, beautiful. Just enjoy. This is a sign of a warmer day ahead. It's going to be sunny in most of the province, most regions across the province. We're going to see temperatures from these lows of single digits we're seeing to double digits later as we get into the day. Winnipeg, it's 8 degrees and clear outside. It's a calm start to the week. Much lighter winds being felt outside. We will see plenty of sunshine in the forecast today. We warm up to a high of 17, which is above a seasonal. This time of the year we're at 13, but today we get to 17, and then some clear skies tonight, bringing the temperatures down to 3 degrees. Equally bright tomorrow, another sunny day in the forecast. Up north, we're expecting sunny skies later. We're seeing highs of 10 in Thompson and 4 in Churchill. Currently it's cloudy in Thompson, and we're seeing clear skies in Churchill. We're going to see some sunshine very soon, and then down south, clear skies, sunny day ahead. We're going to see highs near 19. We're seeing 2 degrees in Brandon and 4 in Morris at this time. Right now in Winnipeg, we're at 8. We're expecting a sunny and pleasant day ahead with a high of 17.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk has the commute details for Monday here. What's up?
Yeah, the only major issue out there is at southbound Henderson and Hespeler right now. There's a multi-vehicle collision and also a down traffic standard blocking the curb and middle lane. So advice is to keep left to get around that. There are crews on scene working to deal with the situation. But if you do see anything else going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, or if you want to tell me how backed up it is, I'm curious to know that too. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, Well, as today is the one-year anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel, the attack that killed 1,200 people, including Canadians, and saw 250 abducted, according to Israeli allies. And that, of course, led to Israel's invasion of the Gaza Strip, and tens of thousands of people have been killed or displaced since the conflict began there. Of course, this has spread now into a wider war in the Middle East. But today is a day of remembrance, the October 7th day. We have coverage, of course, through the week of the resulting war as well. But to that end, the Asper Jewish Community Campus today in Winnipeg will host a walk for Israel and a solidarity gathering. The Jewish Federation of Winnipeg helped organize the event. Jeff Lieberman is their president and joins us by phone this morning. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Marcy.
What are you thinking of this morning?
Well, for me, I woke up this morning. It's hard for me to believe that it's a year that the terrorist attack happened in Israel. And, a year later, there's still over 100 hostages that are still in captivity. The war continues, both, in Israel and other fronts of the Middle East, but also, around the world where the rise of anti-Semitism has occurred, so quickly after October the 7th, and it's a battle for people on an everyday basis now.
How has this impacted, would you say, our local community?
It's impacted in a great way. There's approximately 14,000 Jews in Winnipeg. A number of Israeli Winnipeggers live here, and almost every Jewish person has family or relatives in Israel, and especially the Israelis that live here. They left here, some of them years ago, left Israel, some, several years ago, some, more recently. And with the rise of anti-Semitism that's happened, people feel insecure. There's lots of hatred out there, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish rallies that are happening, and these are really difficult time for our community.
Now, you had the opportunity, for those that don't recall, to go to Israel last fall. You were part of a solidarity mission, and as part of the trip, you toured Kfar Aza, which is a kibbutz in southern Israel, an area that was attacked by Hamas militants. What still stays with you about being there at that time 1 year ago?
We walked through the kibbutz, and it was devastating. So we were there towards the end of November, so approximately 6 weeks after the attack, and as you walked through, you could still smell the burning of the homes, and you saw the shot up homes that were that had explosives, ashes everywhere, everything, just so much destruction. But really, it was the smell of the burning that really affected me, and I still imagine it now, and it's hard to believe that humans could do to other humans what Hamas terrorists did to Israelis on that kibbutz and at the Nova Music Festival and other kibbutzim, and not only killed the Jews but killed others as well, including Arabs. Just horrible to see and horrible to smell.
Today, the Walk and Solidarity Gathering that I mentioned is being planned, just one of the events that's being planned to mark October 7th today. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's actually going to be happening and maybe some of the people you have planned to be speaking?
Yeah, we're going to gather at around 5:30, just outside the Asper Jewish Community Campus, and from there at 6 o'clock we're going to have a walk for Israel, which will be about 35 to 45 minutes, and it'll end at the Asper campus, and then we'll have a solidarity rally afterwards where there'll be some speeches by some politicians, community leaders, prayers, some songs. So it'll be a chance for Jewish Winnipeggers and many others in our community as well that support Jewish Winnipeggers and support Israel. And we know that there are a number of non-Jewish people coming to support this as well. That they'll be there and be a part of our rally.
Calls are growing locally and across the world for a ceasefire, as you know, and an end to the violence that we're seeing. What do you think needs to happen for the wider war to come to an end?
Well, that's a tough question. Myself, like I'm sure many others, really hate to see innocent people being killed. That's not what anybody wants. But at the end of the day, Israel really needs to do what they need to do to survive. They have enemies in the Middle East that don't want them to exist, and these are terrorist organizations. Nobody has anything against the Gazans or the Palestinian people or the people of Lebanon. It's the terrorist organizations that the wars are against. It's against Hamas. It's against Hezbollah, the Houthis, and certainly Iran. And if Canada had a border with enemies that wanted to shoot rockets and destroy that country, I'm sure Canada would do what it needs to do to also make sure that them and their people are safe. So to me, it's a very difficult situation. We need the hostages released as soon as possible. There won't be any peace with the Palestinians until that happens for sure. But at the same time, Israel really needs to do what it has to do to defend itself, and we need to support that. Israel's the democratic country in the Middle East, and is the one country that the U.S. for sure can count on to keep things in order there. And Iran is a real enemy, and there are a number of Iranians that are in Winnipeg that support Israel, just because they left that regime and they had terrible lives there, and they know what Israelis are going through. So, very difficult situation, but Israel is a strong country, and it really needs to do what it has to do to defend itself.
Jeff, thank you for your perspective, and we appreciate your time in the program today.
Thank you very much.
Jeff Lieberman is president and CEO of the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg. The marking 1-year Walk for Israel and Solidarity gathering happens at Asper Jewish Community Campus at 5:30 today. Now, there is also the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba holding a rally later today as well. They're asking people to meet on the steps of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights at 6 o'clock. And later this afternoon on Up to Speed, we will hear more about how the Palestinian community in Manitoba is also reflecting on this day, October 7th. We're going to hear a lot of perspectives on what's been happening in the Middle East this week on our program as our special coverage 1 year later continues. And I have to tell you, the media is often accused of both sidesism. I know that here we've been accused from all sides of that. So it's been difficult to get people together for conversations on the air, which is our normal go-to to hear perspectives and put people together to hear different perspectives on different issues. I've had a number of people I've been on the phone with, especially over the last week, from all communities in Manitoba that represent the conflict or what's happening in this conflict, flatly say they don't want to come on the air. A lot of people afraid to come on the air say they would like to share their perspective, but they don't feel safe. And that's just not in the world. That's in our community. And so coming up on the show at 10 to 8, we have part of a special conversation that Nadia Kidwai had over the weekend on the Weekend Morning Show on her show. And it is about a new organization, as I've been mentioning, that is hoping to build bridges between the Jewish and Palestinian communities here. So we're going to hear a part of that conversation still ahead, just ahead of 8.
1 month in, what are your thoughts on the new school cell phone ban? How has it affected you and your family? What are your kids saying who are students? That's the focus of today's call-in conversation on Radio Noon. We open the line to you just after 12:30.
Time right now is 7:24, and a bit of music from Toronto's Lex Jr., who'd been sitting on a melody line for a few years, but wasn't quite sure where to fit it in. But it changed when he linked up with a musician from Montreal, Kelly Technice. This is Lex Jr. and Kelly Technice with Shine.
I don't care, I make the rules, I do it my own way, and I don't care, I make
Tune's called Shine, Lex Jr. featuring Callie Technis on CBC. Let's get into who's shining in the Major League Baseball playoffs. Soon we're going to know our Final Four. Scott Regehr, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
My host was a little sad last night because my husband's cheering for the Dodgers, and whoa, could the Padres have please had more home runs in that game?
Yeah. What did they have? 6?
I think 5 or 6. It was some kind of a record.
Yeah, but listen, there's another story on that series when we're talking about the Dodgers and Padres. I think that series is going to last a while, and here's part of the reason.
We've seen the bad blood on the field, the tension on the field, of course, extends to the fan bases as well, but no excuse for what we're seeing right here.
There was a long delay, Marcy, in the 7th inning last night as fans at Dodger Stadium threw trash at San Diego outfielders Jurickson Profar and Fernando Tatis Jr., who had 2 of the homers. The star players were catalysts in eventually helping the Padres win big over the Dodgers and tying things a game apiece. LA manager Dave Roberts was asked about his supporters' reaction.
Well, shoot, I've seen over 1,000 games here, well over 1,000 games in this ballpark. And I've never seen anything like that. And so obviously there's a lot of emotions and things like that, but that's something that should never happen. Like I said, I've seen so many games at Dodger Stadium, and our fans are as good as any that I've ever seen.
This is reminiscent, Marcy, of playoff games at Rogers Center in the Jose Bautista bat flip days when things like beer cans were used as projectiles. Few pro athletes are as exposed as baseball outfielders are. So here's hoping there's no retaliation as the series shifts to San Diego. Things were also intense, Marcy, although less nastily so, in Philadelphia, as the Phillies had a walk-off win over the Mets that ties that series at 1. The AL Division Series, meanwhile, resumed today. The Yankees up on the Royals 1-0, the same lead that Cleveland has over the Tigers at the moment. The Guardians, by the way, have a rightful claim to be called Canada's team, with a playoff record, 4 Canadians in their roster, led by the Naylor brothers.
I didn't know that. Maybe I got to start cheering for Cleveland.
Yeah, why not?
Let's move to rugby. Speaking of Canadian sports, it was a big weekend for Canadian rugby.
Set up nicely for Gallagher. Island caught napping down the blind side, and Canada make them pay.
Caledon, Ontario's Claire Gallagher with a try in Canada's win over Ireland this weekend. This is part of the so-called WXV1 series in Vancouver. Those are the Roman numerals denoting the top tier of the 15-a-side version of the sport, where Canada is ranked 2nd in the world at the moment. And Tyson Boom is now looking forward to playing the best team in the world, top-ranked anyway, England, next weekend.
It's always nice to win the first 2 games of a tournament, and now we get to look forward to the last one, hopefully coming on top. I think we can expect a physical battle again against England, so this is good prep for that. Ireland really brought it with the physicality. We're going to need to step it up when we get to England, and yeah, it's going to be a big battle. We're looking forward to it.
Tyson Bukaboom, whose father Jeff used to play for the NHL's Oilers. Women's rugby is booming itself these days. The World Rugby Organization says women and girls now account for close to 1/3 of players globally.
And it was also a historic weekend in the Canadian Football League.
Straighten up and fly right. Cool down.
Nat King Cole's Straighten Up and Fly Right, the top tune in 1944, Marcy. That was the last year there was no Alberta team competing for a Grey Cup. There will not be this year. Edmonton and Calgary both lost this weekend and are thus mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Since the Stampeders entered the league in 1945, there's always been at least one team from Alberta in the postseason. It'll be Winnipeg, BC, and Saskatchewan on the west, Montreal, Ottawa, and either the Argos or Ticats in the east. And a quick tap of the broom to Carrie Anerson, the Gimli native, won the first Grand Slam of the season over Rachel Homan, the Tour Challenge.
All right, thanks a lot, Scott.
You betcha.
That is Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. We still have a bit of a breeze, but nothing like the wind we had over the weekend. It's going to be sunny today, a high of 17 right now. It's 8 in Winnipeg. The people of Israel are marking a somber anniversary 1 year ago today, the Palestinian militant group Hamas invaded Israel. About 1,200 people were killed in the attack, and more than 250 were taken hostage. In southern Israel, a vigil to honor the victims of the Nova Music Festival. Armed Hamas militants stormed the site last year, at the attack sparking massive response from the Israeli military in Gaza. Hamas officials say nearly 42,000 Palestinians have died in the territory. That number does not distinguish between civilians and armed fighters. Now, in Manitoba, a new group wants to encourage dialogue between the local Jewish and Palestinian communities. Emet Aviatar is a Winnipegger born in Israel. She is one of the founders of the group Manitoba Friends of Standing Together. She says one of their goals is to create a space where people can talk with one another.
Just like Standing Together works together, we want to work together because really, I think we are both facing a common enemy in what's happening in the world. And if they keep us fighting with each other, that's where we're really all going to lose.
The president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba, Ramsey Zaid, says they've had some difficult conversations, but it's important to be open to dialogue. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. Thousands of healthcare support workers are poised to strike this week. Gavin Axelrod has the latest.
Talks continued through the weekend, but MGEU and CUPE say they were unsuccessful. The union said in a joint statement yesterday they bargained all weekend with the help of a conciliator, but the statement said they remain far off from an agreement. If a strike goes ahead, it will involve about 25,000 healthcare support workers across Winnipeg, Brandon, Dauphin, Selkirk, Portage, Winkler, and Steinbach. The workers include healthcare aides, laundry workers, dietary aides, ward clerks, recreation coordinators, and other healthcare support staff who work in hospitals, personal care homes, as well as workers in the home care program. A possible strike would also mark the second biggest one in Manitoba's history. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Peguis First Nation has filed a lawsuit against Winnipeg developer Andrew Marquis. The First Nation claims he failed to act in the best interests of the band and benefited financially from breaches of duty while working for the First Nation. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Peguis filed a statement of claim against Marquis, some of his companies, and a company owned by his wife, claiming he breached his fiduciary duties to the First Nation when he provided consulting services beginning in 2020. According to the statement of claim, Peguis alleges Marquis acted contrary to no conflict and no profit rules and derived what Peguis called a significant improper profit from breaches of fiduciary duty. According to the claim, Marquis helped the First Nation with debt repayment, housing shortages, and using treaty land entitlement funds to purchase real estate for Peguis. Peguis alleges Marquis had a Peguis real estate trust purchase an old East St. Paul golf course because he was interested in developing it. The allegations have not been proven in court. No statement of defense has been filed. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now, in a statement, Marquis calls the claim against him baseless, without merit, and legally defective. He says he will move to strike the claim. 2 American scientists are this year's recipients of the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkun discovered microRNA. It helps regulate gene activity. Ola Kamp is a member of the Nobel Committee.
We can see that in many tumors, the microRNA networks are perturbed. We don't have yet any way to treat these disorders where microRNA networks are perturbed, but we hope that someday that will come.
The Nobel Prize carries a cash award of about $1 million U.S. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Well, they ran, walked, and rolled through central Winnipeg. About 1,500 people in the Canadian Cancer Society CIBC Run for the Cure at Blue Cross Park yesterday. The annual event raises money for breast cancer research and support services to help people like Debbie Carranza Munoz. She found out she has breast cancer earlier this year.
As soon as I got diagnosed, I thought about this run, and I knew that it was my turn to receive the care and the research and stuff like that, and then just have my friends and family beside me to support me.
Organizers say they raised about $400,000 with this year's run. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
We're listening to CBC This Morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It is school day number 6. It is a Monday morning. Hopefully you had a wonderful weekend. Just a quick reminder, if you want to weigh in on anything on this show, you can go to my Marcy Marcusa Facebook page and check out check out posts there as well. One of the things we posted early is right out of the news. So how might you be affected if there is a healthcare support worker strike in Manitoba? I've posted that question, hoping that maybe we'll hear from people who work in the system, or also families who are affected and use support workers as well. So if that's you and you want to weigh in, please write to us there or call us at 788-3205. Well, Abby Adiemi has a great job this week because the weather looks fabulous.
Yeah, it looks fabulous. We're looking at a sunny day and a warm one across the province. We're going to feel that sunshine spread. It's going to spread everywhere. We're seeing temperatures ranging from low single digits in the northern part of the province, and then down south, we'll see the teens down here. Winnipeg, it's still a bit breezy outside, but not as windy as we saw this past weekend. We're going to see plenty of sunshine in the city today. 8 degrees at this time, lots of sunshine in the forecast. We're heading to a warm high of 17. Then we cool down to 3 tonight. Brandon sitting at 1 at this time. Mainly clear skies you're noticing. The sun is about to make its appearance. You will warm up to 19. Also lots of sunshine in the forecast. Similar conditions you will see tomorrow. You will even, for folks in Brandon, you'll be seeing highs around 22. Thompson sitting at 4 at this time. Cloudy, though you'd see a mix of sun and clouds later in the day, and then you warm up to 10 degrees and deep down to 2 tonight. Churchill also clear, though chilly, -2. Expect some sunny conditions. You warm up to 4 degrees and then you dip back to -2 later in the day. Dauphin is clear at 2 degrees. Lots of sunshine I see in the forecast for that part of the province. A high of 17 for tonight. You dip down to 3 degrees. Gimli 5 and clear for the Interlake region. We're looking at sunny skies and a warm high of 17 for Gimli. Steinbach sitting at 4 degrees and similar conditions to Gimli. Sunny skies in the forecast, also aiming for a high of 17. Then you cool off to 3 degrees tonight. Morris 4. Clear skies you're seeing. The rest of the Pembina Valley region would see sunshine, warms up to 18 degrees, and then you drop down to 5. And tomorrow, similar sunny conditions will continue. So across board, we're expecting a sunny weather across the province today. And with temperatures currently at -2 in Churchill, Winnipeg, we are at 8 degrees in the city and 3 degrees still at the airport. Lots of sunshine in the forecast, and we do warm up to 17.
So we'll see what holds for next weekend. I know we're a week out, but a lot of people might be thinking ahead to Thanksgiving, so could be nice.
I hope the spillover from the midweek of the 20s stay with us till the Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, agreed. All right, the commute, Corey.
Southbound Henderson at Hespeler, it's been a problem all morning. There's been a multi-vehicle collision and a down traffic standard blocking the curb and middle lanes. I got a call from Arlette who says that it's actually backed up all the way to Monroe right now, and it's all just still down to one lane, so look out for that. But if you do see anything else going on out there, if you have an update on that or anything else you're seeing, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, up next, at one time, it was a place where people could purchase clothing, furniture, food, and even a house.
Black towers reach for the sky. Celebrate the city where the Eden Center shines. Eden Center shines. It's all here at the Eden Center.
Can you make out what they're singing there in that old muddy jingle? You can always tell when we pull something from the archives. It's talking about Eaton's, of course. The Eaton's retail chain is long gone, but those memories still live on in downtown Winnipeg in a home of a former Eaton's employee. CBC Manitoba's community reporter has a nice feature for us this morning. Shanley Vidal visited Corey Quintaine's collection of Eaton's memorabilia in his downtown home.
If you knock on it, you can hear that tin sound. This was a ceiling tile from the downtown Winnipeg Eaton's store. Kind of a darker brown over the years. It's oxidized with the cream paint. And of course, you know it's from Eaton's because it has the E logo in the middle. I used to work for Eaton's from 1995 to 99, and I was always a big fan of the store growing up, and now I have a growing collection of Eaton's memorabilia here in my condo here in Winnipeg.
You have a very large sign. It almost reaches the ceiling.
It's a lot bigger than I expected. A friend of mine found it on Facebook Marketplace and sent it my way. And I was a very eager buyer for this particular piece. White plexiglass with the, the dark blue Eaton's logo that everyone knows and remembers. And everyone knows and remembers where these signs were located too, if they were downtown Winnipeg. These went above the doors of most of the exterior entrances of the store. So I thought, oh, maybe it's like 4 feet long, something like that. It's a little big, but I could probably handle that. And then the gentleman that was selling it pulled it out of his car, and it was like at least 7 or maybe closer to 8 feet tall. And my eyes must have bugged out of my head when I saw it, going, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? But I fit it in my car, and now it's living just a couple of blocks away from where it originally stood.
You have another sign as well. It looks like a wooden sign. Where did that come from?
That one is one of my holy grails in my collection. I just found it recently, again, Facebook Marketplace. So it's pretty heavy. It's good quality wood. Every door between the top glass and the bottom glass had this wooden panel with the Eaton's logo on it. And it's iconic. Everyone remembers it. Maybe I remember it even more just because I was a little guy when I first started going to Eaton's, and that probably would have been in about my eye height.
Now, the ladies here who are standing up and dressed very fashionably, what's their story?
These are some figurines from the Eaton's window. They were on sale at an auction. I would guess probably 30s, 40s looking at them. But they aren't in the best condition. They are a little rough. She's missing a finger.
The outfits that they're wearing, very vibrant. Like we have some purple, some turquoise, and it's very much speak to that era.
The outfits are made of felt. The hair and the figurines are made of papier-mâché. When I saw them up for auction, I couldn't say no. Until the price got too high on one of them.
What did you do at Eaton's?
I was display manager at the Brandon store. It was kind of interesting. I had no experience whatsoever doing window displays. I just thought it would be a fun job when it came up. And so I had some mannequins that I had purchased at a store that was closing, so I dressed them up in my mother's clothes, did some photo shoots in my parents' house, and I got the job eventually.
Corey, we're in another part of your home, and we have a shelving unit here that you've set up. Tell me about some of the Eaton's treasures you have.
This is a mixture of, there's some Hudson's Bay things, some Holt Renfrew things, some other retail history things, but mostly Eaton's. The main star of this area definitely is Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead was the official mascot of Eaton's Toyland in the 40s and 50s, and then brought back in the 80s and 90s. And Pumpkinhead is featured pretty prominently here. One of my favorite things of my collection is the Pumpkinhead tea set. My aunt remembers playing with it when she was young.
Tell me about the mascot.
Pumpkinhead, he is more of a bear than anything. He has a tuft of hair on top. He is a very integral part of Eaton's history.
What's really standing out besides Pumpkinhead is the boxes.
Everyone, I think, has their different memories depending on their age of what Eaton's box was special to them. This one here, this is the one I remember most, and the one a lot of people, in their 40s and 50s may remember most, with the iconic stripes from the 80s and the 90s. But then, of course, we have this one up here, which is from, I think, the 60s and 70s. And this star formation was pretty iconic.
Tell me about how your Eaton's collection got started.
Well, it actually started at the store closing sale in Brandon. I was looking for, some mementos of, my job over the years. And there was a box of flyers and catalogs from the 70s and 80s in that era kind of thing. And so I purchased that at the fixture sale, and that was kind of the first thing, along with clippings I would save along the way, just being an employee going, oh, this is interesting stuff about my work. This is one of the most interesting pieces for me personally in the collection. This is the Globe and Mail Report on Business from August 27th, 1999. So you can see there's a news story on here about Eaton's and their landlords. They don't want them to run going out of business sales. And you can see there's a young lad here that's holding a store closing sign running through the store. You can see even the background of the picture is blurry because this young lad is running so fast and so dedicated, and that young lad is me.
What is it like for you when you look at that picture of you when you're 25 years old and you just lost your job and now you have a collection of Eaton's things?
It's kind of funny. It's almost like retribution. It's like, aha, was a tragic day for me, but I'm going to hold on to this memory and I'm going to grow these memories and keep these memories of the good times from before. Everything from before this photo is taken. I could easily start an Eaton's museum if I took up everyone on their offers. It's so gracious of them. But you do have to learn to say no as a collector sometimes. I know every time I go to Canada Life Centre, I still rub Timothy's toe on the way by for good luck. If True North wants, a new home for that statue, I think I might have a spot for it.
That's CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal out visiting a special collection at the Winnipeg home of Eaton's collector Corey Quintain.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned. And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
So Chloe Friesen is guest hosting today on Radio Noon's Call-In, and the guest is Matt Henderson, superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division, who will be answering and guiding through questions about the cell phone ban. We are 1 month into the cell phone ban in Manitoba schools. How's it going for you? So students, families, how is it going for you? You can call in live. Maybe not on your cell phone, not if you're in class, but call in between 12:30 and 1 o'clock this afternoon to take part in that conversation. You can also leave a message now about the cell phone ban 1 month in and how it's going for you at 788-3797. That is the Radio Noon listener line, 788-3797 for the call-in today. 13 minutes now to 8 o'clock. It's 8 degrees in Winnipeg. I should update that. I think I haven't in a while. The high is 17 today in Winnipeg, and it's going to be nice and sunny. You've got a clear sky out there to start your Monday morning, and currently in the city, we are still sitting at 8 degrees. Next on the program, I just want to mention what we have online posted for you on my Facebook page. It is a question that comes right out of the news because a lot of people are wondering whether or not there's going to be a healthcare support worker strike in this province. If it goes ahead and happens, it will involve 25,000 healthcare support workers. And CBC is trying to gain information. There were talks all over the weekend, and then tomorrow, of course, is the suspected deadline. This would affect people in Winnipeg, Brandon, Dauphin, Selkirk, Portage, Winkler, and Steinbach. We asked, how might you be affected if a strike does go ahead with healthcare support workers? Judy Herskovich wrote into us, I'm one of the many unpaid family caregivers in Manitoba. My family member independence is affected. Stress and anxiety would increase. So if you want to weigh in on how you might be affected, whether you're a worker or a family member, we would love to hear from you this morning. It right now is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. And we have time for a little bit of music this morning. This is from Tara Spencer's new album, Sunset. It explores, she says, the full arc of love, from the teenage romance to milestone anniversaries like this. This is 20 years in.
We were too afraid to touch. I knew I loved you too much to settle for the distance of a friend. So we swam in student loans and sold sandwiches and cell phones. We didn't have a dime, but we still had time to spend. Thought that we knew everything, jumped the gun with 2 gold rings and got married in the blazing August heat. We opened all the gifts we got in the Empire Theater parking lot. Yeah, we tied the knot and we never got cold feet. There isn't one thing I would alter. I know you'll stand by me through thick and thin. When we walk together, our steps will never falter. I don't know where you stop and I begin, 20 years in. Remember when you bought me that pair of fancy stockings one Christmas when the money was running tight? so mad for what you spent. I overlooked your good intent, but we still paid the rent and they still fit me just right. Oh, we lived in dingy basements, so happy to have our own place. Went to school, brought 2 babies into the world.
Cute. From Windsor, Nova Scotia, Tara Spencer singing about her life 20 years in. Her new album, all about relationships, is called Sunset. It's 9 minutes to 8 o'clock now on CBC. Well, next on the show, it is October 7th. This morning, we're remembering 1 year ago since the attack on Israel, and then, of course, the resulting war. But one of the things that we are reporting on is how this has affected people all around the world. Next on the show, Manitoba Friends of Standing Together is a brand new organization, and it hopes to create space for dialogue between the local Jewish and Palestinian communities here. And at a time when things are so polarized locally and in the Middle East, of course, it is no easy task. But 2 Winnipeggers from each of those communities are leading the way to try to build bridges. Ramzi Zaid is the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba, and Emmett Eviatar was born in Israel and is one of the founding members of Manitoba Friends of Standing Together. They sat down with Weekend Morning Show host Nadia Kidwai yesterday, and here is part of that conversation.
What gives you hope? Because it just feels like we're 1 year since October the 7th, and things are just escalating in the Middle East. You know, let alone how divided things are in Winnipeg. Do you even let yourself think about a time where there will be peace between Israel and Palestinians? Ramzi?
I mean, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
When that is, I couldn't tell you. I can't see an end in sight, to be perfectly honest. Watching the news daily, it's horrific. It's people are being affected, are being killed by the thousands. Not just in Palestine now, in Lebanon, and they're talking about a war with Iran now, right? I mean, it's a terrible, terrible situation right now, and I wish I could tell you I see an end in sight, but I don't.
Mm-hmm. Emmett, do you have any hope for peace?
I do, because endless war is not sustainable. It just isn't. And no matter how much people try, it's just not sustainable. And at the end of the day, there are 7 million Jewish Israelis, there are 7 million Palestinians. They're both there. Nobody's going anywhere. And anybody who has fantasies of one of those groups of 7 million people disappearing, they're just wrong. They're going to be there, and they have to live together. And that is what Standing Together is working towards. And I truly believe that we will get there because there is no alternative. We have to get there. You just can't sustain endless war. That's the end of it.
Closer to home, though, here in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, given that both you, because you have family in the occupied West Bank, Ramzi, you have a sister in Israel, Emmett. These are not like remote things for you. These are your realities. Closer to home, given that both your communities have faced pain and trauma, how are you able to make space in yourselves for dialogue with the quote-unquote other side? Ramzi?
I think it's something that we just have to do. Mm-hmm. It's something that you have to give the opportunity to, and you have to give that chance to, because if we don't, who will? We have to be able to make that first move and move past this so that other people around, I don't want to say can follow along, but can see that it is possible that we can get along and we can move forward together.
Mm-hmm. Emmett?
I think that dehumanization has been the root of so much of the agony that we're experiencing. And the way to fight dehumanization is to be human with each other. That's the only way, really, because in the abstract, it's one thing, but in the other, you're sitting here opposite Ramzi looking at him. I mean, obviously, he's a human, as am I. And I feel that that is the way to solve all of these things, is just to sit down with a cup of coffee and a cookie and that's how we can make this better.
Speaking of which, Emmett, you have an event coming up for Manitoba Friends of Standing Together, which is open to all Manitobans.
Absolutely.
So tell us about that.
So November 7th, in the evening, not quite sure, probably 7 o'clock, but don't hold me to that. And we're still working on the venue, but we will be having our launch event. After that, you'll be hearing more from us. And we'll have some storytelling. We'll obviously talk about Standing Together and the work that they do. They even recorded a video for us, specifically for us, mentioning us. So cute. And we'll talk, we'll eat together, we'll be humans together. And that's what that event is about. So that's so November 7th, mark it in your calendar because you want to be there and learn what we're doing and just be humans with us.
And it's open to everyone, right? You don't have to be from the Jewish community or the Palestinian community. Open
all
to
people
any
of goodwill.
Manitobans. Ramsey, will you be going?
I hope so. Yeah. The plan so far is to be going, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just finally, what words do you have for people in your own communities who may have a certain perception of the quote-unquote other side? What would you want to say that really kind of further creates a space for more dialogue like this?
We're all humans. And remember, endless war is not sustainable. Yeah. I'm no fan of Yitzhak Rabin, but he said, you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies. If you think that the Palestinians are the enemy, then that's who you have to make peace with.
Ramsey?
Absolutely. We're all humans. We've lived in Palestine, Israel, for longer than 76 years that we've been there. We've been there for hundreds of years living together. We have to get to a place where we can live together again.
That's Ramsey Zaid, the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba, and Emmett Aviatar, who was born in Israel and is one of the founding members of Manitoba Friends of Standing Together. If you want to see the full conversation with CBC host Nadia Kidwai of the morning show, on the weekend morning show, you can go to cbc.ca/Manitoba. More coverage of October 7th is coming up here, so that's 3 minutes to 8 o'clock now. World Report is right around the corner. Right now, let's dip back into our local news headlines, though, with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, 25,000 healthcare support workers are set to strike starting tomorrow. Talks did continue through the weekend, but both MGEU and CUPE say they were unsuccessful. We're going to hear the latest coming up. As well, Peguis First Nation has filed a lawsuit against Winnipeg developer Andrew Marquis. The First Nation claims he failed to act in the best interests of the band and benefited financially from breaches of duty while he worked for the First Nation. We'll hear some details in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
2 minutes now to 8 o'clock, and in Winnipeg, we've been at 8 degrees all morning. We're still there with a clear sky. It's going to be nice today, sunny and a high of 17. It is school day number 6 if you're looking at the cycle and getting ready to head out the door. And you might be wondering what to wear, especially since this September was the warmest September our province has had in over 100 years. But why was it so hot? And is this our new normal? We have answers coming up. Stay with us.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Victor Garber is one of those actors who's been in everything. Titanic, Sweeney Todd, Alias, Legally Blonde, Frasier, the list goes on and on. Victor is getting the Lifetime Achievement Award from his hometown of London, Ontario, and he'll be here to look back on a remarkable career.
I've really had a great life.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
1 year after the October 7 Hamas attacks, Israel is a nation at war on multiple fronts. The Lebanese militant group Hezbollah launched missiles at Haifa on Israel's northern coast. Media say 10 people were injured. Tal Rosen is with Israeli Emergency Services there.
I heard a boom, and then I saw this building. I found 4 people injured, between minor to moderate.
Israel's military says it has been targeting Hezbollah strongholds in Beirut and southern Lebanon, but it is also shooting down missiles flying toward Tel Aviv. The armed wing of Hamas says it has fired rockets targeting that city. We will have more on the Israel-Hamas war in a minute, but first.
Sad, emotion, unbelievable, like a nightmare.
We have details of how Israelis are paying tribute to the nearly 1,200 people who were killed on October 7th and the roughly 250 others who were taken to Gaza as hostages. Our CBC correspondent Sasha Petrusik is in Reim, the site of the Nova Music Festival massacre.
With the sound of war just a few kilometers away in Gaza, tears flowed in a dusty field. 1 year ago, this was a dance floor for thousands of young people at the Nova Music Festival. Today, it's their memorial, where a DJ plays the last song many of them ever heard. Early last October 7th, after that song, sirens rang out, rockets filled the sky, and heavily armed Hamas militants stormed in. People tried to run or hide, but 40 people were taken hostage and 364 were killed, making this the deadliest spot on a day that saw more than 1,200 Israelis die. Hundreds came to remember.
I'll never stop dancing for him.
Canadian Ben Haas narrowly missed coming to the festival. His friend came and was shot dead.
To be here is crazy. It gives me all emotions all over.
This nightmare wasn't supposed to happen.
Vicky Farage lost her daughter. She can't understand how the attackers could have killed so many so coldly.
We don't accept it. There's no room for hate, revenge, anger. No.
Like many here, leaving candles and saying prayers, she still seems in shock, especially since the conflict continues. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, in Reim, Israel.
In the Palestinian territories, there are no official vigils to mark the Hamas attacks. In Gaza, officials say Israeli attacks have killed more than 41,000 people. Independent analysis suggests 60% of buildings are unlivable. And in the occupied West Bank, violence inflicted by Israel's military and extremist settlers have killed more than 700 Palestinians in the past year. Our correspondent Chris Brown is in Ramallah.
Israel's military says Hamas fighters in Gaza had planned to fire a barrage of missiles into southern Israel to mark the October 7th anniversary. The IDF says they managed to shoot off 4 rockets this morning before its troops destroyed the launchers. But that suggests even after a year of punishing attacks, the militant group is far from dead. Over the weekend, Israeli forces stormed Jabalia in the north of the Strip and issued new evacuation orders, which will again displace thousands of civilians because the IDF claims Hamas elements are trying to regroup.
Everyone dreams from us is destroyed here in Gaza.
People in Gaza, interviewed by a videographer working for CBC News, spoke of a year of utter desperation. Mohammed Adwa is a 25-year-old medical student who's been displaced 4 times.
My biggest hope is to be safe. I didn't need anything more, just to be safe.
Miranda Asaf, a 37-year-old English teacher and mother of 5, has been displaced 10 times.
We can't send our children to schools because all the schools are destroyed. We can't find any mosque, church. Everything is completely destroyed.
For Palestinians outside Gaza in the occupied West Bank, it's also been a year of losses. Hundreds of thousands of laborers have been unable to work in Israel, sapping the economy, and extremist Jewish settlers are emboldened. Rights groups say attacks on Palestinian communities have become much more frequent and violent. Chris Brown, CBC News in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
Another hurricane is on its way to Florida, just days after Helene left devastation along the western coast. People living there are boarding up their windows. Hurricane Milton is now making its way towards them. It has now spun into a Category 3 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. The CBC's Ithel Musa is following the storm from Washington. And Ithel, what's the latest?
Well, communities in Florida are preparing to get hit by a Category 3 hurricane. Milton is forecast to make landfall on Florida's western Gulf Coast this week in the Tampa Bay area, where communities are still reeling from the destruction of Hurricane Helene. That storm made landfall on September 26 as a Category 4 hurricane, killing more than 200 people across 6 states and causing billions of dollars worth of damage. There are still people today without power. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency for 51 of the state's 67 counties in preparation for Milton. Officials are urging residents to make safety plans now before it's too late. Here's Florida Senator Rick Scott.
It's going to have wind, it can kill you. It's going to have water, it can kill you. So I hope everybody right now starts thinking about what in the living daylights are you going to do?
People are still cleaning up from Hurricane Helene. What are Floridians being told to do now?
Quite simply, to get out. Several counties along the Gulf Coast have issued evacuation orders. Residents are being asked to leave and seek shelter elsewhere. Here's more from Florida's Director of Emergency Management, Kevin Guthrie.
I have the State Emergency Response Team preparing for the largest evacuation that we have seen, most likely since 2017 Hurricane Irma.
Officials are also encouraging residents to clean up as much debris as possible left behind by Hurricane Helene so that drainage areas are clear before any heavy rainfall to avoid further flooding. Officials fear the wreckage from Helene could pose a serious hazard once Milton hits.
Thank you, Ithel.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Ithel Musa in Washington. Scurvy sounds like a disease of the past, but Canadian doctors are being urged to look out for symptoms of vitamin C deficiency in their patients. And some experts say the rising cost of fruits and vegetables could be a factor. Mike Crawley has more.
This is 5 days worth of food for the city now.
More than 300,000 people used the Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto over the past year. That's 1/10 of the city's population. The food bank's CEO, Neil Hetherington, says across Canada, people with low incomes are feeling the pinch from rising food prices.
And so they are making decisions to buy less fruits and vegetables and instead substitute it for much more processed food.
A report published today in the Canadian Medical Association Journal recounts a case study of a woman in Toronto recently diagnosed with scurvy. She had been living almost entirely on canned soup and tuna, along with white bread and little in the way of fruit and vegetables.
This isn't the first case of scurvy that I've seen in my career so far.
The report's lead author, Dr. Sally Engelhardt. She's an internal medicine specialist at Toronto's Mount Sinai Hospital.
If you're not thinking about scurvy, then there's no way that you're going to be able to diagnose it.
Dr. Danielle Raza is a family physician at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. He was not involved in treating the woman.
I think this case study speaks to the broader concern and the increasing trend we're seeing in food insecurity in our patients.
While there are no hard figures on the incidence of scurvy in Canada, a recently published paper found the rate among hospitalized children in the U.S. tripled between 2016 and 2020. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
2 American scientists are this year's recipients for the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkun discovered microRNA. It helps regulate gene activity. Ole Kamp is a member of the Nobel Committee.
We can see that in many tumors, the microRNA networks are perturbed. We don't have yet any way to treat these disorders where microRNA networks are perturbed, but we hope that someday that will come.
The Nobel Prize carries a cash award of about $1 million. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, and on YouTube. Thank you for choosing to join us this morning. Appreciate having you with us. We've been at 8 degrees all morning long. Abby's in with a glorious forecast for today and for the rest of the week, actually. If this holds, it's looking pretty good. Speaking of forecasts, so we always like to do this when the month changes. We're going to look back at the previous month, especially because September was the warmest September our province has had in over 100 years. But why was it so hot? Is this the new normal? We're going to look at some of those answers ahead. Stay with us. .11 is the time right now, and let's go to headlines with Heather Wells in our news center this morning. Hi, Heather.
Hi there. Well, as we've been hearing, today marks 1 year since Israel was attacked by Hamas. It has divided communities around the world, including right here in Manitoba. But a new group wants to encourage dialogue between the local Jewish and Palestinian communities. We're going to hear more about that coming up. That group is called Manitoba Friends of Standing Together. So more on that as well. 25,000 healthcare support workers are set to strike starting tomorrow. Talks continued through the weekend, but MGEU and CUPE say they were not successful. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
We're asking you, actually, if you want to weigh in, how you're feeling about the whole situation, if you're a worker, but also if you're a family that uses a healthcare support worker. Obviously, there are many of you. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are watching what might transpire into a strike, develop into a strike here or not. So you can always weigh in on our Facebook page, or you can call us at 788-3205. All right, let's get into what's going on in this forecast. Abby, I've been using words like glorious and warm.
You have it right, because of if you look at what we had this past weekend, like from Thursday, Friday, all the way to Sunday, man, I think I would be excited about the coming days for sure.
It was all over the place, wasn't it? It was like there were pockets of Saturday that were nice and beautiful, and then
it picked, and it was like, and then
Saturday night.
I felt, I was like, I hope there won't be branches falling on the hydro poles and all of that. I was just thinking about that.
And then there were
Saturday.
all kinds of problems.
And then that happened.
It was just the darkness, I think, and the rain coming sideways. It was all of a sudden that first day where I really felt like, whoa, okay, here it is.
Yep.
And then yesterday, besides the wind, was actually a pretty beautiful fall day, I would say.
Yesterday was a pretty fall day, and today even better. We're in for like a sunny day, a warm day, and this is something that will touch almost every part of the province. We'll see temperatures, though it's cool in the northern part of the province, but it's still going to be beautiful with some sunshine there. And then warmer southern regions, we'll see temperatures from, low single digits to high teens. Winnipeg currently just a little bit breezy this morning. You will feel that, but not as breezy as the couple of days that we've had. Not as windy as we had this weekend, I would say. And we're looking at a lot of sunshine in the forecast. Right now in Winnipeg, it's still 8 degrees. The sun making its appearance outside. We're warming up to a high of 17 later today. Then as we get into the night period, we cool down to 3. And tomorrow also going to be sunny, and we'll see 18s. In other region, the northern part of the province will be seeing sunny skies later. We'll get a high of 10 in Thompson, and then Churchill gets to 4. But right now it's cloudy in Thompson at 4 degrees. Churchill is at -2 and seeing mainly sunny conditions. And then down south we are seeing clear skies, the sun making its appearance. We'll see highs near 19. Brandon at 0, Dauphin at 1, Gimli 5, Steinbach 4, and Morris 4. All the regions will be seeing highs around 17, but Brandon gets to warm up to 19 today. Overall, sunny, warm day across the province. And it's going to be a beautiful one, so enjoy it.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, are people enjoying the commute?
They are, unless you are at southbound Henderson at Hespeler. There's a multi-vehicle collision and a down traffic standard there. That's been an issue all morning, and that is blocking the curb and middle lanes on southbound Henderson, so keep left to get around that. Heard earlier that's backed up as far as Monroe. Someone called listener line to tell me about that. Other than that, we did get a call from Jacob, who said he was out on the bike he says, the perfect morning for a bike ride so far. So crisp, cool, lovely, not too sweaty, and traffic seems to be running smoothly. So thanks for that call. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Is the time right now. Well, as I mentioned off the top of the hour here, we have had quite a September. It was, frankly, hot, especially a couple weeks ago, that Saturday where we hit like 28 or 30. Environment Canada recently released their stats, and it was the warmest September, in fact, that our province has had in over 100 years of record keeping. But why? And is that the new normal? Alex Crawford joins us now via Zoom. He's an assistant professor at the University of Manitoba's Department of Environment and Geography. Hi, Alex.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, hottest in 100 years, is that right?
Yeah, actually, I could go a little bit farther and say that the Winnipeg records go back over 150 years. So for this city, it's even more impressive.
And what's the answer to why?
So there's a few things that are involved. So I'm going to walk through 3 different items and try to do it in an efficient way here. So first, you have to mention global warming. Without that, you would expect everything in Winnipeg in September to be about 1 degree Celsius cooler. So that's giving us part of that record. Another thing that's important is the polar jet stream. So you hear about this a lot in winter, but in September, the polar jet stream is this fast-moving ribbon of air that's high up in the atmosphere, and it'll shift north and south over Canada, over the US. Usually it's sitting right around Winnipeg in September. So we get some cold days, some warm days, but this year it was sitting up in none of it, actually, most of the month. So that meant that it was, again, a few degrees warmer than you might expect. And then the last thing, you're getting a lot more southerly wind than normal. And that wind was blowing from the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, and then over the United States. And the ocean over there was also at record heat this September. So whenever we were getting that air coming from the south or even from the east, we were having it blow from a place that was at record warmth as well. So you take those 3 things together, and that's going to lead us to having this record September.
Well, in the first hour, actually, of the show this morning, we were talking about hurricane season, also looking unprecedented. There's 3 hurricanes. The current one that we just passed, Helene, passed through the U.S. rather, and now Milton they're watching. And they're saying that there's 3 hurricanes that could, in fact, converge. So they're watching all of these systems, and it would be the latest in the season that this has happened. So certainly things are changing. If we look at the numbers, I mentioned Winnipeg, and I think I said 28 or 30 on that really hot day a few weeks ago. But if you look at how hot on average it got in our city and the rest of Manitoba, what did those temperatures look like for September?
Yeah, so the overall average was 17.8 degrees Celsius, which is honestly a really comfortable, good temperature for your average. That means the high temperatures are usually getting up into the 20s. And that, just to a little bit more context, depending on how you define normal, that's somewhere in the vicinity of 4.5 to 5.5 degrees warmer than you would normally see in September. So that is also a pretty large departure from usual.
You mentioned climate change, the bigger picture. How concerned should we be about this? And at what point do you start looking at trends in that bigger picture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the short term, let me repeat that number again, 17.8 degrees Celsius. That's an interesting number because when you look at how people heat their homes or use air conditioning to cool their homes, 18 degrees Celsius is right around that target where you're going to have the least amount of heating or cooling. And so what that means is that for this September, you probably saw people using their heat a little bit less. Like, I have not turned it on yet because I'm going to keep that thing off as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, we just had on the weekend, we just cracked for like half a day, and then we're like, okay, let's turn it off again. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people haven't had to use the heat yet. And so that in some ways is a good thing. Also, I know plenty of people who do gardening, and they've been happy with the fact that we've only had 1 frost so far. And if you look in the next several days, it's going to be warm enough again, you can put some plants back out. So there are definitely some ways that this can be very positive, especially in the short term. In the long term, though, yes, this is emblematic of climate change and warming in general. And if you have 4 or 5 degrees Celsius warmer than normal in the middle of July, that could be a lot worse than if you're talking about September.
Got it. What are you looking forward to, in terms of weather, looking ahead to in terms of weather trends that you're most interested in as we kind of settle into not just the rest of this fall and this year, but even into 2025?
Yeah, I think there's two things that I'd really highlight. One, last year for the world as a whole was the warmest year we've ever seen. And whenever you get a record like that, as someone who knows statistics, I'd say I'm never going to bet on the next year being even warmer. But if you look at this year so far, there's a very good chance we actually break last year's record and it will have stood for only a year. So I'm definitely paying attention to that global number overall. And then the second thing that I'm interested in looking more locally at Winnipeg, last year we had a very warm winter, in some respects, second warmest that we've had on record. And I'm interested to see whether we repeat that or whether it's a little bit less extreme. It would suggest, based on what you look at in things like El Nino, that it probably won't be as warm as last winter. But again, you never know. Have to pay attention and watch.
What are we expecting, just as a last question, for October?
For October, in the short term, it looks like it's going to be warmer than normal, similar to September. Our forecasts are pretty good through the middle of October right now. And that the patterns that we see aren't likely to change anytime soon. But late October, Halloween, and if it's cold again on Halloween, don't blame me.
Oh, we're blaming you. We're calling you back. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much, Alex, for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
That's Alex Crawford, an assistant professor at the University of Manitoba's Department of Environment and Geography. Well, no one's getting blamed for today, as Abby just mentioned. Sunshine and a high in Winnipeg of 17 degrees.
Whether you're hanging out or out on the move, stay in the know with CBC Listen. The cost of living with Paul Havershrud goes beyond facts and figures.
Real estate is the 800-pound gorilla of Canada's economy.
And What on Earth with Laura Lynch explores the climate change crisis, problems, and solutions.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
The Cost of Living and What on Earth. Available now on CBC Listen.
We have a bit of music next on the show from Ojibwe Métis musician Brenton David, who's looking back on his journey on his debut album, from learning the Métis fiddle in Selkirk to performing as part of the Juno-winning group Tim and the Glory Boys. The album's called The Inner Trail, and this tune is River Running Wide.
But I wouldn't trade it. There's a fiddle tune on the Métis hour, white sunrise and crocus flowers. We hold our tongue more than I'll admit. But you're in luck if you listen up. I'll let you in on where happiness is. You don't need a reason. Go tell them that they're right. And let them keep believing grass is greener on their side. You bet I keep a secret from the left coast and the right. You're bragging wood-bed treason against this river running wide. Well, I bet that city apartment lost a couple stars when your neighbors moved in. It's the party every weekend. It has your toes off the deep end. It feels like you're waiting on a wind. Well, I don't care from where you're coming from or where you've been. You don't need a reason. Go tell them that they're right. You let them go tell them that they're right. You let them keep believing grass is greener on their side. You bet
River Running Wide, Manitoba's Brent and David. That's the name of the tune. You're going to find that song on his debut album. It's called The Inner Trail. It is 8:26 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. Well, if you were with us in the last hour of the show, you heard that we were going down memory lane because our community reporter went out and looked at a collection of collectibles from Eaton's. And here's a call we got.
Hi, it's DJ. Listening to your item on the Eaton's collector made me think of the 10 years that my husband and I lived in a kit house up in Swan River. Now, kit houses were houses you could order from a catalog, and they would come, all the lumber and all the instructions and pieces would come on the railroad, shipped to your town, and then you would put it up. Our house was not an Eaton's house, but one of the most common and most famous ones was a design you could order from Eaton's called the Eaton Beauty. And I still, to this day, if I'm driving around older parts of town or out in the rural countryside, it had a very iconic roof line and you could spot it quite easily. Thanks. Bye now.
Well, in a strange connection, as we do a story this morning about the prefab Eaton's homes back in the day, today we also next in the show have a story about the prefab homes of today. And specifically, you might be swarmed for ads for them because Amazon Prime Days is coming up. Amazon's well known as a site to buy just about anything. And they also sell 2-bedroom prefab houses through their online shopping platform, rather. A number of small homes are available there, and they start under $20,000 Canadian. CBC's Luke Williams took to the streets of Hamilton, actually, to ask about whether or not you'd make that big house purchase on Amazon.
Do you ever shop on Amazon?
Absolutely all the time.
So are you currently an Amazon shopper at all?
I am, absolutely.
So do you currently buy on Amazon?
No, I do not.
Why is that?
I don't have much money and I don't do much shopping online.
Okay, so if you were to shop on Amazon, what would you be shopping for? You can be totally honest.
I would some kitchen supplies because that's more in my profession. I'd probably buy some chess supplies, maybe some chess books. It's also one of my hobbies.
Work and play.
Absolutely, yes.
Now for the curveball. Would you buy a tiny 2-bedroom prefab house off of Amazon?
I've seen these, and it's not that I wouldn't. I think it would need to be a very specific time in my life. I would, but I would probably put it somewhere remote and just live in the woods somewhere or something. But I've seen those, and I'm not against it. I would live in something like that. I currently live in a 500 square foot apartment, so not far off.
So here's a curveball question for you. Yeah. Would you buy a prefabbed mini 2-bedroom house on Amazon?
No. Why? I would never have the money for that, and I don't like buying houses. You know, I would more. Yeah, I just don't have the money for that. You know, I'm going to be poor for a good decade as I'm building my career, so it's no.
So here's a curveball question for you. Would you ever consider buying a 2-bedroom tiny house with a porch off of Amazon?
I saw that, actually. I would if I could afford it. I've seen those. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, who can afford it?
I can't afford it. I'm poor.
Same here. Thank you.
Houses being sold on Amazon on the heels of the old Eaton's houses back in the day, the prefab homes that still exist in many communities, as you've been hearing. That was Luke Williams from CBC on the street talking to people about the idea of buying a house online. It is 8 degrees in Winnipeg. It's clear, our high 17. The commute's been pretty good. 788-3093 if you need us. We had an early issue southbound Henderson at Hesplers, so that is likely clear by now. And I apologize if we've already updated that and I missed it, but 788-3093 if you want to reach us. The call-in today on Radio Noon, 1 month in, the cell phone ban in Manitoba schools. How is it going? If you want to leave a message now, 788-3797 or join the conversation at 12:30. It is time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It is 8 degrees, and we're going to warm up under the sun. Actually warmer than seasonal. Today's high is 17. Memorial services are underway across Israel today, marking the first anniversary of the Hamas attack against Israel, October 7th last year. Air raid sirens marking the moment when the Palestinian militant group Hamas began invading Israel. About 1,200 people were killed in the initial attack and more than 250 were taken hostage. The attack sparked a massive response from the Israeli military in Gaza. Hamas officials say nearly 42,000 Palestinians have died in the territory. That number does not distinguish between civilians and armed fighters. Now, in Manitoba, a new group aims to encourage dialogue between the local Jewish and Palestinian communities. Emet Aviatar is a Winnipegger born in Israel. She's one of the founders of the group Manitoba Friends of Standing Together.
Just like Standing Together works together, we want to work together because really, I think we are both facing a common enemy in what's happening in the world. And if they keep us fighting with each other, that's where we're really all going to lose.
The president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba has met with members of the group. Ramsey Zaid says it is important to be open to dialogue. Thousands of healthcare support workers are poised to strike starting tomorrow. Talks continued through the weekend, but both MGEU and CUPE say they were not successful. In a joint statement, the unions say they bargained all weekend with the help of a conciliator, but remain far off from a deal. 25,000 healthcare support workers in Winnipeg, Brandon, Dauphin, Selkirk, Portage la Prairie, Winkler, and Steinbach are set to strike. They are healthcare aides, laundry workers, dietary aides, ward clerks, recreation coordinators, and other healthcare support staff who work in hospitals, personal care homes, as well as home care workers. Peguis First Nation has filed a lawsuit against Winnipeg developer Andrew Marquis. The First Nation claims he failed to act in the best interests of the band and benefited financially from breaches of duty while working for the First Nation. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Peguis filed a statement of claim against Marquis, some of his companies, and a company owned by his wife, claiming he breached his fiduciary duties to the First Nation when he provided consulting services beginning in 2020. According to the statement of claim, Peguis alleges Marquis acted contrary to no conflict and no profit rules and derived what Peguis called a significant improper profit from breaches of fiduciary duty. According to the claim, Marquis helped the First Nation with debt repayment, housing shortages, and using treaty land entitlement funds to purchase real estate for Peguis. Peguis alleges Marquis had a Peguis real estate trust purchase an old East St. Paul golf course because he was interested in developing it. The allegations have not been proven in court. No statement of defense has been filed. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now, in a statement, Marquis calls the claim against him baseless, without merit, and legally defective. He says he will move to strike the claim. A child and family services agency in southern Manitoba is being sued by two former employees. The two women who worked for Sandy Bay Child and Family Services more than a decade claim they were wrongfully dismissed in 2021, a year after the agency's executive director was fired over fraud allegations. In separate lawsuits filed September 26th, Tanya Aitkins and Alyssa Roulette say they were dismissed without cause over allegations they had mismanaged funds and failed to report expense approvals. They argue Sandy Bay CFS has not provided any evidence to support those allegations. Aitkins and Roulette are seeking compensation for lost wages and benefits. Sandy Bay CFS tells CBC it had not yet been made aware of the lawsuits. Well, they ran, they walked, and they rolled through central Winnipeg. About 1,500 people in the Canadian Cancer Society, CIBC, Run for the Cure at Blue Cross Park yesterday. The annual event raises money for breast cancer research and support services to help people like Debbie Carranza Munoz, who found out she has breast cancer earlier this year.
As soon as I got diagnosed, I thought about this run, and I knew that it was my turn to receive the the care and the research and stuff like that, and then just have my friends and family beside me to support me.
That is Debbie Carranza Munoz. Organizers say they raised around $400,000 with this year's run. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you for the morning, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Heather Wells in our news department with Megan Ketcherson and Joni Nicolo. Alana Cole out there this morning. Thank you. In addition, I want to thank our live team, Corey Funk and Kevin Ipatebo, our YouTube producer, as well as Abby Adiyemi behind the controls of the show. Our hardworking team of associate producers, as well as leaders in unit Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. And special thanks to Nadia Kidwai. We played part of a conversation she had on the weekend morning show on the program today. All right, let's have a last look at what's going on what has been a pretty quiet commute.
Yeah, the one exception is southbound Henderson at Hespeler. There's a multi-vehicle collision that's also knocked down a traffic standard, and that's blocking the southbound curb and middle lane. So keep left to get around that. Heard about big backups earlier as far as Monroe.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Abby?
The forecast for today has lots of sunshine and warm conditions across the province, with highs ranging from 10 in the north to 19 down south. Clear skies tonight, bringing cooler temperatures. We cool off to 2 and 5 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manitoba, for tuning in today. Appreciate your time. And please stay tuned throughout the day for more stories and coverage on all the things developing, including the healthcare support workers who are poised to strike. We'll be obviously leaning in closely to what happens there, and anniversary events and for Israel, October 7th, and also events today for the resulting wars. So stay tuned through the day. Appreciate you.